Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Board meeting to order. We do have a quorum, and I'm just going to put out that we have a very full house. We've got a busy agenda, and if you're not on the agenda, I ask that you just keep your comments to yourself. If you would like to talk to any one of the supervisors afterwards, one-on-one, that is totally fine. But we're just gonna try to stick with the agenda today and get through this because we do have a very busy day. And there's been a request to amend the agenda to add Sue Loken in discussion with the renewable energy topics that we're already discussing. Is there a motion to amend the agenda?
So moved.
There's motions, our second.
I second it.
Okay, we'll add Sue Loken to the agenda down right after Jeff Floorball. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Okay, amendment has been agended. Motion to approve the amended agenda and approve the minutes, please.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, hi, Rich.
Hi. Road maintenance, we're out blading what we can. There's some spots out there that got pretty bad last week with,
Roswell.
well, I don't know if they're frost boils so much as they're just not taking the heavy loads once we got the moisture, but we're trying to work on those. So that's what we're gonna focus on right now. Few items you have on the budget or on the agenda today for me. I want to start with one of the simple ones first. The one thing that I need to do is probably update our Title VI non-discrimination agreement with the DOT. I don't know how to explain it. We went through this in 2013 when they mandated that every county have a Title VI coordinator, and I reluctantly accepted the duty. And what stemmed this is they called it an audit in Mitchell County, and it's actually just kind of a review, but we need to update this every year. Every time the chair exchanges name, I got to update this thing, and I've been forgetting to do it for several years. And since we do have a project with federal funds in it, which is that bridge on 390th, I think we should probably maybe push this through. It's all it is updating that we're gonna abide by the Title VI non-discriminatory. It's crazy, but
Part of the paperwork with the
part of the
DOT, huh?
paperwork, yeah.
Yeah.
Now they can get on file because I'm sure they're gonna ask for it because we do have federal funds in the project.
Yeah.
It's a law, so I don't know why we gotta have, there's more to it than what we're actually doing because I don't know. I called the individual because of, like in Mitchell County, they call it an audit. I called and said, hey, look, I don't know what we're supposed to be doing. And I think it's more of a training than an audit, but we'll learn more about it. But it's more than, if you read through what's required, it's more than one person should really be afforded to be responsible for because it involves the whole county, not secondary roads. But that is specifically for secondary roads and the fact that we do receive federal funds and the DOT wants us to have an updated policy. That way they know we're following the non-discriminatory laws and ADA compliance and all the other stuff that goes with it. Because the Title VI thing goes with property exchange, with all kinds of other things. So it's more than just one department.
So part of the process basically with receiving federal funds and working with the DOT.
Yeah. So I mean, even with flooding, you get federal funds with flooding, and that might be emergency management, that might be whatever. And there's certain things that I'll know more after I go through my
So
audit.
do we need to update a policy for the entire county?
Well, that's what that is. That's
Yeah, it
just
is.
that'll update us for where we're at right now.
So maybe we need to get EMA and whoever else would be a part of that if it was to happen. A little
Well,
involved if need be.
Right. Well, right. There's more to the responsibilities than I can put time into right now. Unfortunately, we don't have a need for a lot of federal funds at the time, so it's been.
Right.
I'm gonna learn a lot more in the next month probably about what the duties are, and then I'm gonna probably come back and request that somebody else take it over. We figure out a different way to manage it, but we'll figure it out from here once we get to this.
Okay. So I'll take a motion to approve the Title VI agreement with the Iowa DOT.
I'll make a motion to approve that.
All right.
Second.
There's a motion, a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion will carry. All right,
Thank you. Another house cleaning item is some projects that we finished up here a while back that I need signatures on for final closeout. It's more of a documentation thing for the DOT, but final pay voucher for the bridge on 342nd down in the south part of the county by VMC, just a final pay estimate. The final project costs $468,460.44. We're going to pay the retainage of $14,053.81. That'll close that project out.
make a motion to approve the final pay estimate.
I'll make a motion to approve the final pay estimate.
I'll second
Okay, any other discussion on it? All in favor, aye?
it.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carry.
The other one is for closing out farm market project that went through the city of Fertile. I don't have a sheet for final number through that because the DOT's sheets are a little goofy and I should have had a printout of it, but I don't have our accounting. But
They brought that in from Dogwood into town
Yeah. well,
yeah, yep,
all the way and then all the way through town.
yep, we went from where they left off on their street. I think is the library there? Is there?
Yeah, right there.
We went from the library all the way out to
Yeah.
Dogwood then.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all. So I just need to have some final, I don't know, should be the final pay estimate on that, but there's 3 different pages to sign on that below mine.
Make a motion to. Yeah, I'll pay him.
Okay, there's a motion to accept the final pay in the Fertile project with farm to market, right?
Yep.
Do a second,
I'll second it.
any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye?
All right.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion will carry.
I can get you a final number on that. It's around the $370,000 range, I think, for the project. And the city has already reimbursed us their share. So,
So they were excited to get it done too.
yeah, they were. Yeah, they were.
Good.
A good project for us. So now we've got the DOT final, or the DOT program and budget, and AJ, I'll get you, what you have in front of you is preliminary copies. I'll get you the final one once we go through the approval. I didn't want to give you the final one in case you wanted to make some changes, because once I print the final one, then I got to call down and have it unlocked and whatever else. So
Okay.
the stuff I presented to you last week on the farm to market, that farm to market Excel spreadsheet that I gave you, told you I was going to bring you a bridge one to the HPP one.
Mhm.
So those are just kind of a financial outlook of where our farm to market balance is and where our bridge funds are right now. And so if you combine the two together, we have a need in the next 5 years, and this is scary, a need of extra funding that our funds can't support of about $11,300,000. That's include that
Bridges and.
bridges and roads, and that buries our accounts.
Right.
This is doing all these projects at what we think we need to do for these roads to make them usable.
Right.
And not just Band-Aid projects.
Okay.
If we can't find that money, we're gonna be looking at a lot of Band-Aid projects, which will be just spot overlays. I hate to say seal coat, but it could be. There's a lot of need out there, and as we all know, there's not enough money to do everything we want to. We're trying to be as efficient as we can to try to put as much. When we pave a project, we try to do as much as we can to make them a longer life cycle
Right.
on the pavement, so we don't have to come back and do them as frequently. So obviously things change with economy and everything else. These are estimated costs, what we budget for. I don't know what they're gonna be when they bid. We found out when we did bridge projects here that what we estimate and what the market's given us isn't always the same, so.
And this is all up to 2026.
Yeah, yeah, so, and we'll have a bridge inspection this winter again, and that'll change everything again, so.
Because you're only looking at what, 5 or 6 bridges?
And those are just the ones that are in our
Right.
federal aid or our federal bridge program.
Right.
I've got some smaller stuff that don't meet the requirements that we have to come out through locally, and they're in the local budget under local spending. So this is the need to do this stuff, but we also have some stuff in the
Right.
program that's also there that we're trying to cover. Each year it changes as far as what we have the funding for. I might have stuff in fiscal year 25, but I don't know where my budget's gonna be in fiscal 25, so I can't
Right.
tell you what the need is yet for those projects.
Cause we have something like, what, 25 deficient bridges?
Oh, yeah, that, and
Give or take.
that's low compared to other counties. We're doing okay, but ever since they had us redo these special haul vehicles, then we started seeing different postings on our bridges because of all these larger trucks with smaller wheel spaces. So, so what you'll see then, that's just the need. The budget itself, and Jackie, I don't know what we're gonna have to do because I just found out Friday that the contractor for 105 isn't gonna be working. I mean, the contract's let, and it's approved, the project's let and approved, but they're not gonna be coming in until, at the earliest, they told me the third week in July. So now we're in fiscal 22.
Oh, okay.
So everything we amended for fiscal 21 with the TIF money coming in possibly and paying for it. Now this morning I had to go and change everything to fiscal 22. So I don't know if we need to amend, you've got an amendment coming. I don't know if we have to amend it now, because I don't know, they could call me tomorrow and say, well, by the way, our schedule changed again. Now we're gonna come back into fiscal 21 and pay it, but it's a crapshoot, really.
Yeah.
But I'm going with what they gave me. So my DOT budget that I'm presenting to you today is different than the county budget that I presented to you a few weeks ago. And what it does is it kind of eliminates me trying to have to amend the DOT budget, but we're still gonna have to amend the county budget next year because of what's going on. And I don't, do this 4 times a year.
Yeah.
But I'm just letting you know where it stands right now, that it's changing. So, and it might, because of where everything is at, it might change how much we really need to borrow. It's once we get zeroed out of fiscal 21, I'll know where fiscal 22 is at for sure. So it's projected that we're at, because I changed that project around now, we're projected at a total expenditures of $8,075,095 to be expended out of the secondary roads account, with reimbursements of around receipts of 9 million, but that's includes the potential carryover from this year to next year. So that number changes all the time too.
Right.
We just don't know. We could end up, maybe by the end of this year, maybe we could end up, we aren't gonna have to tip as much to do 105. We don't know until we get there. But what we did in the budget was saying we're gonna tip all of it just so we have the money for it.
Right.
And then the program, there's a lot to look at in the program. You got a map that'll tell you kind of where everything's at. Tried to make it more legible and probably less confusing, but I'm sure it's color coded and whatnot. But we have, I guess, the biggest most important thing is right now where we're at. And believe me, I know there's other roads out there that need a lot of work too, but we're looking at which ones seem to be the most efficient as of when I put this together. So we've got Wheelerwood north of 105 going to the state line. That one's in pretty tough shape. We're looking at maybe just a 3-inch HMA overlay or hold in place recycle. I haven't finalized that. With the money that we have, I'm trying to minimize. It doesn't take as much traffic as other roads. I'm trying to kind of hold off and spending as much farm to market as we can on certain roads that don't take as much traffic as other ones that are coming up.
So
So-
that one doesn't probably get a ton of truck.
It
traffic.
doesn't, but
Just
it's,
due to the casino being there and the intersection
Yeah.
being a pain in the butt.
and that's fine, but beyond that is where the roads are really oxidized. It
Yeah.
needs to be
Yeah.
resurfaced, and it might be, we might go with the 1 inch or 1.5 inches of the high pro. We'll see what that might cost us, but
Rugland, a lot of stuff goes to Rugland, isn't it? Right?
so.
But I mean, it's not like
Yeah.
it's not like a straight shot down.
No.
All bland or something.
From part of the-
Structurally, the road it seems pretty strong. It's
Yeah.
just that the surface is just deteriorated over time. It's oxidized. It's the nature of the beast. So, and then I've got some local bridges I hope we can hit. Mallard's a short bridge, Raven's a box culvert, Spruce short bridge. Some things that we had the engineers come through and tell us they were deficient and need to be replaced within the next 2 to 5 years. And that was probably 2 years ago. So you got to try to hold off what you can. And then I did add, there's another bridge project we're looking at for fiscal 22. It's on, I think it's on Killdeer. There's a double T bridge. I mean, the top structure is rated at a 7 out of 10, which is really good. Problem is you build all these nice structures on top of old wood pilings. We got some material piling. I'm working with WHKS. I was there last week to talk about our bridges and what we can do. We might be able to, it's over Elk Creek, so that's kind of a touchy situation there. It's always wet. And so what we're proposing is maybe they come up with a plan for us to encase the whole piling system with concrete. And that buys us probably 15 or 20 more years out of that structure. What we're looking at is finding ways to, I'm having them evaluate some of our stuff to give us options. You know, here's what it costs to get us 15 years. Here's what it costs to get us 30 years, what it costs to get us 70, which when I say 70 means here's what the cost of a new bridge is. So they're going to give us options on what we can do to kind of keep limping our system along until somebody in the federal government decides that we need more money.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're trying to do the best with what we can. I'm just telling you, and I hate to be the downer here, but it takes a lot of money to keep the system rolling. So, and then I did, like I said, I added 105 into next year because I'm going to have to expend funds next year. So it's got to be programmed for next year, even though we let it this last year. So, and then everything else, like I said, is a target in the next 4 years or target projects we want to do. And if you run and review that a little bit, the summary is we've got in fiscal 22, we're looking at close to $4 million in local funds that we need. Swap funding, 250,000, which is bridge funding, and then farm and market funding of $900,000. In fiscal 23, we're looking at another $4.3 million with that swap and farm to market, but that doesn't include that we would have to supplement farm to market for projects. So to kind of read everything off is kind of a shot in the dark. I understand, but
It doesn't matter. It's all gonna change.
it's going to change. It'll
between now
change
and then.
tomorrow. But I just wanted to give you an outlook of where we're headed and what we're looking at for just immediate projects, because really the most important thing is what are we doing next year. And so once we get 105's program and whatever else, we get 105 paid for, and the farm to market fund can cover itself. On the Wheelerwood project, we won't have to borrow for that, but we do. We look at fiscal 23 is where we start having to throw more money at projects again locally. So we did have a request I'm sorry, I won't go any beyond that. If you guys want to look at this and approve it or not, if you do want to approve it, I'll bring you the originals once I go back upstairs and across for
As
you.
far as bringing, approving your 2022 DOT budget and program.
Yeah.
That's what you're asking for.
Yeah.
Okay. Take a motion to approve the fiscal year 22 Iowa DOT budget and program.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
I'll second it.
Good. Any other discussion on it? Hearing none, all in favor aye.
All right.
Aye. Opposed? Carry.
So, thank you. We did have a request from Randy Feenstra's office in the Nyakog District 2. Mark knows about this, but I think he's on that committee maybe.
Yeah.
They wanted us in less than 24 hours to come up with projects that they could show the federal government that we earmark. And they said, well, 2 to 3 projects out of District 2 Nyakog region. And we're like, well, who's going to decide in less than 24 hours whose projects wants to get funded and whose doesn't? So we did is we put a bunch of projects together. I put 105 East into the mix, saying, hey, look, this is a project you need to do. And so the district, our group decided, you know what, we're going to submit every project that everybody put in here to show the federal government that there's a need and that any money wouldn't be wasted. So we did that. Now I understand that Ashley Hinson now wants something similar by the 15th, which trying to come up, there's always a need, but when they want you to organize everything for,
Right.
I think they're requesting that it's projects in fiscal 22.
Yeah, when it is.
So
22.
what's the immediate need now?
They want projects that are pretty much, we're gonna start, but you may have been short funding or you had matching.
Right.
And I got that brought to my attention about with the Port Authority and the pipeline, and yeah, there's no way that doesn't even really qualify.
Well, and then they want
anyways.
letters of support from the public, I think.
Yeah.
And so they want this all in less than 3 days, which is kind of, okay, how the heck you're gonna get all that done? I don't know. So
Yeah.
my guess is it's stuff that probably is really close to shovel ready, that maybe already went through the process of having the public support, but
It's projects that were gonna happen no matter what, not ones that you would like to happen.
Right,
You better
right.
have been ready to go for it because you're gonna have to.
and that's the one
It's
thing
like
with the Feenstra request was, well, is it a tip and a stip? Well, it isn't hard to put it in the tip and the stip if you want it to be there.
Yeah.
No, I think only one project had partial tip stip funding that we submitted to that one, and everybody else as well. It doesn't take long for us to have a meeting and put everybody's in the stip and the tip.
Mhm.
So, and that's transportation infrastructure program and state transportation, so the acronyms are
Right.
Stip tip, whatever. I get too many acronyms to remember. So I don't know what we can do. I don't know even really how to go about it. I didn't get the email directly. I guess it might have come to the Board of Supervisors or something.
It
So
came through NIACOG.
did it? I didn't, I know, yeah, it did. And I didn't get, it
I
came from NIACOG, but I don't know who she sent it out
So
to.
everybody that's on that. Like I'm trying to.
Because I didn't,
board.
well, but it didn't come to county engineers that I
Okay.
know of. I didn't get that email. Otherwise, if it would have, unless Chris Diggins plans on sending it out to us too. But what she sent out was it seemed to be more broad space, broad.
From Ashley Hinson.
Yeah, the
I haven't
Ashley
seen, I
Hinson
guess I haven't seen that one
Okay.
yet.
I got it,
You might have got it,
3:30 Friday afternoon.
because we do have a transportation board meeting on Wednesday, so. I'm
And that's
guessing
probably
we
when they want to
discuss
discuss
day
that
then.
stuff.
Yeah, 3:11 Friday afternoon. It was, because I'm on NIACOG board, so that's what
Okay.
it sent me, but I'll forward it to you guys.
But I don't even know what, we can go look at a project, but we
Probably
have
kind of the
got,
same request that Feenstra had almost.
Pretty much, you got a few more days, but this is one that's basically, you better have stuff ready to go, that you're gonna do in 22, but may have been
Right.
scrambling for funding.
Because
and
they're
short
gonna be
funding.
discussing their huge transportation, whatever they're gonna do out there in DC.
plus they don't tell you how much funding is available.
Well, they don't know yet.
They
They haven't- they haven't
I know they
allocated.
want all this stuff, but they don't tell, okay, yeah, we're gonna give Iowa $2 million. You guys gotta fight over 99 counties about whose projects are better than whose. I mean,
Right.
sometimes it's just crazy how they do that, but
Yep.
I guess for fiscal 22, we've got some small local projects we could probably throw in there. We're
Right.
not asking for a lot of money, and maybe having not a lot of money helps.
It might be an opportunity to get that 105
Right.
east to move
Right.
it up the west.
But it's not scheduled for fiscal 22, so it won't fit in there because we
Right.
didn't budget for fiscal 22 because we didn't have the money for fiscal
Mhm.
22. So it's just, so anyway.
Yep.
Okay.
I think that's all I've got for you. We probably aren't gonna be able to make our 9:30 meeting with the safety committee, but we'll have contact with him and maybe push him back a little bit.
We can do that. We can do it later this morning.
Because you guys got a lot left to get moving on, so I won't take up any more of your time. If you guys got questions.
No, it's good.
You get your
Appreciate
head
it.
spinning, so. I don't
Yeah,
wanna
well,
ask
mine's still
anymore.
spinning. I was looking for my stapler this morning and I did 10 circles, got dizzy, almost fell over. So.
Thank you, Rich.
Yep.
Appreciate it. Drainage,
Just one.
one stamp form or
Yep.
something.
No. Motion for the drainage claim, or stamp one, is it?
Motion to approve stamp form. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
All right.
Aye. Opposed? Motion will carry. Claims, Don, with BMW. See out there? Sorry.
That's the end of the line.
Oh, it's all right. How you doing today?
Good.
How you
Good.
doing?
Try to make this quick with the, I'll get standing. First off, I'd like to, I guess offer my condolences for your loss on the board last year, Paul.
Thank you.
I didn't know anything about it until we were riding around on Thursday.
Okay.
I had heard nothing of it, so.
One of those topics we don't like to discuss.
Pardon?
It's one of those topics we don't like to discuss.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to
Yeah.
let you know I hadn't heard of it, so.
Thank you.
I did go out and look at the ditches. Andis and I went and looked at them.
Glad
You
you
got a little bit of an education on how we do, what we do.
Mhm.
And basically, it's approximately a third of the ditches we're doing every year. Now, there is one ditch, two ditches, 23 and 8. The last time we came through, they were being cleaned.
Right,
And so we did those last year,
okay,
but they're in that section of the county that we're doing this year. So I'm just gonna have the guys double check it. I didn't quote it.
okay,
There shouldn't be anything out there to keep it in the same year.
Yep.
We're gonna go ahead and look at those, and if
Good.
there's anything there, they'll take care of it.
okay.
So, but in reality, there shouldn't be anything in those ditches.
No,
I'll pass around I do have a copy for each one of the supervisors and one for the auditor's office. Basically, that's always, these prices are the total maximum that would cost to go through. When the guys come in, they'll do a time materials not to exceed these costs. I do have the previous 3 seasons, what the estimate was, or the maximum was, and what the cost is. I'll go through that with you as well. This year's estimate for the ditches in that portion of the county is 22,000 for all the ditches. And they're, as always, they're individual projects, so we have to keep each one separate. I'll go back to 2018, 3 years ago, the quote was 24,250. The actual amount billed when all the dishes were done was 15,982. And the ones last year were 42,500, and the actual was 18,854.58. Oh, yeah, and then if you remember last year, what we did, because we didn't get the work done the year previous, and so we did both 2019 and 2020 ditches last year. And the quote for the 2020 ditches was 40,750, and the actual was 17,000, or excuse me, 13,725. And basically, the cost, the quote will be higher in the area of the counties that have more districts that have to be separated out, because as I said, I've got a price sold all out separately.
Right.
And I try to make sure I've got enough in the quote in case the guys find something that I don't, and it's gonna test you, when I go look at ditches, I don't go out, drive every mile and count trees. I just drive from bridge to bridge and kind of get a look out there to see what's out there. In most cases, most of the guys we're working in, we worked in Worth County for enough years that I could probably just set up my desk to do the quotes. Another thing it does for me is it makes sure that my guys are getting the stuff done, because I don't have time to come back and recheck things every year to, look at the stuff we did the year before. I'm too busy going forward. And that way, if I do see something out there, I can get back in the records and say those trees shouldn't be that big. So. And so with that, unless there's a lot of questions, that's really all I need is to, get the approval on this year's ditches. Another thing too, I'd like to remind you is on my quote, if you accept the quote, then I need you to sign off as accepted and the date. And what that does with my insurance company, as long as I have a signed contract with my customers, you're automatically additionally insured with my insurance rather than just being a certificate holder. And so if you sign off on that and give me a copy, you keep a copy, then you just automatically additionally insured.
Okay.
Good. Any questions for Don?
Somebody went with.
Yeah, it's a program we need to keep up on.
Yeah.
We need to quit now. All right, if not, I'll take a motion to approve the estimate for spraying drainage ditches over in the western part of the county.
I'll make a motion to approve that.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion is second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Motion will carry. You want me to sign this one, Don? And
Yeah, you can just sign mine too, and I can take it and have the auditor make a copy of it.
I'll sign this one. We can either way.
Okay, now you got other copies, but then I'd like you both to have a copy, so myself and board. I'll just stop at the office, auditor's office and get a copy, maybe just leave it there for the board to have.
Yep, that'd be perfect.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Don.
Let you get back, it looks like it's gonna be a busy day.
Thanks, Dan.
All right, claims. Everybody look over the claims.
Yes. I'll make a motion to approve the change.
There's a motion to approve the claims.
I'll second it.
There's a second. Is there any questions or discussion on it? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Oh, okay.
Payroll claims.
Yes, we sign those.
All right, motion to approve payroll claims.
I'll make a motion to approve the payroll claims.
I'll second.
Motion second, any discussion? None, all in favor aye. Aye. Carry. Any payroll eligibility salary changes?
There's reports.
Sorry, there's reports.
I think we haven't do it yet.
That's all right. Auditors report, sheriff's report, and recorder's report.
And sheriff is quarterly and monthly.
Motion to approve the reports.
All right, there's a motion to approve the reports. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, no payroll or nothing, eligibility.
No.
Liquor license?
Nope.
Approve the termination of payroll deductions with Aflac.
Okay, the deal on that is we are getting additional coverage through ISAC with group benefit partners.
Okay.
So instead of having a whole bunch of extra payroll deductions, we're just asking that they can still have Aflac, but we're asking that they take care of it on their own through their checking account or whatever, instead of coming through payroll anymore.
There's still people utilizing that then.
Yeah, they can.
Okay.
It's just, there's gonna be some overlap and we just wanna draw the
Clean it up.
line and
Right.
go with ISAC.
Okay. Take a motion to approve termination of payroll deductions with Aflac.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All right, any other discussion on it? Hearing none, all in favor aye.
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Jack,
Opposed?
when is it?
Motion will carry. Okay.
You
Did you sign that?
have 2 copies of everything. Get your credit card number, your social security number.
And date of
Yeah, the
birth.
stamp.
The mortgage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry to butt in.
All right. Safety committee, we'll discuss that later.
I called him, put him on hold.
Okay.
Call him when we're ready to have our meeting.
Okay, sounds good, thanks. All right, public hearing notices. Public hearing notices have been sent, I'm supposed to do one at a time here, but they've been sent to the paper. Public hearing notice would be resolution 2021.4.12.01. Public hearing on Worth County ordinance to prohibit alcohol at Keenan's Quarry. That is from the Conservation Board, the request. Is Jim out there?
He was.
Yeah, he's out there.
Jim, any comments on that?
It's just kind of a follow-up from what we did last summer with the closing of the park. This is just our way of starting to reopen and hopefully have things under control.
Keep it open.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the sheriff and I kind of work together along with the attorney, and this is kind of where we're gonna start for now.
And we're just looking at Keenan's right now.
Yep, we're just looking at
Work County
Keenan's
Lake
for right
right
now.
now. Okay.
That seems to be the
That
hot
seems to
spot.
be the hot spot, so.
And you'll still be able to have,
And within the sheltered house itself, if you have a family reunion, that is exempt from
Okay.
the policy, so.
Works for me.
Um,
Any other questions on it?
no, it's,
Okay.
safety is key out there, and that's one way to help try to
Yeah.
keep it under control. Basically, this ordinance is proposing the public hearing to be on April,
Resolution, isn't
yeah,
it? Sorry.
this resolution, yeah, is public hearing for the Keenan's alcohol to prohibit alcohol Keenan's Court on April 19th, 2021 at 9 a.m. for the first reading. Second reading will be the 26th of April. The third reading will be the 3rd of May.
And just to make sure it's noted for you guys that it's only the Friday before Memorial Day through the Monday after Labor Day each year. Just so
Okay.
it's
Summer
essentially during the summer months.
Okay.
Oh, so if you're
Because
ready-
that's when the out of town crowd, and, you know, we get excessively busy as
Yeah.
with that crowd through the summer, so.
Okay.
This has been sent to the paper, so this will be posted and anyone can come in and question or contest at their convenience.
Good.
We'll take a motion to approve resolution 2021.04.12.01. Is
So moved.
there a second?
I'll second.
All right, any other discussion? Roll call vote, Lowberg,
Aye.
Smithy,
All right.
Stone, aye. Resolution will pass. Thank you, Jim.
But you guys appreciate it.
You bet.
Okay, resolution 2021.04.12.02. Public hearing on Worth County ordinance to repeal ordinance 2018.12.03 titled Renewable Energy Provisions. That's the ordinance we've been discussing on repealing. It has been posted as well. And the public hearing date is also set for April 19th at 9:15 for the first reading, the 26th at 9:15, and May 3rd for the second and third readings. It has been posted, so public is allowed to do the same, test or make any comments during those public hearings. I'll take a motion to approve resolution 2021.04.12.02.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any other discussion on it? Roll call vote, Lowberg,
Aye.
Smithy.
Aye.
Stone, aye. Motion will pass and public hearings are set. Right. Resolution 2021.04.12.03. Public hearing to sell county-owned property. This is for our development out there at the intersection by the casino. We got the pricing to Jeff. Lots 1 through 11 are all specifically priced, and along with lot 12, which was in the agreement to deed back to Diamond Joe. And that price will be $1 to Diamond Joe worth as part of the public hearing. So the first public hearing will be at 9:30 on April 19th. And right here. And we'll see if a second or third hearing is needed on those. So I'll take a motion to approve the resolution 2021.04.12.03.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, motion is second. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, Lowberg,
Aye.
Smithy,
Aye.
Stone, aye. Right. Jeff Corball. Discussion related to renewable energy policies in Worth County.
Don't you guys mind if I take this off? while I'm talking? Jack,
go ahead.
you mind? Much easier to talk about than that. Last week, I submitted a paper at the supervisors meeting with 3 points related to renewable energy projects, specifically the repeal of the ordinance that you just spoke about, the 2018-1203, enacting a temporary moratorium on commercial development of renewable energy projects, a temporary moratorium, and some zoning considerations. I don't want to rehash those points today, but I would be happy to address any questions that you have. So I'd like to pause and ask if you have any questions on what I gave you last week.
I looked it over. I'll let you just go through what you
Sure.
want to do, Jeff. And then
Yeah, the only, I mean, we can have that discussion on the zoning when we get to that point, I guess.
Okay. All right, so my primary purpose today is to address some of the issues that were raised during that meeting last week. And since there is a public hearing scheduled for the repeal of 18-1203, I won't elaborate on that today either. There were 5 points that I noted that were put forward against a temporary moratorium and updates to the zoning. And so I want to address those 5 points that I made note of. Some of those points were legal related. So I obtained a subscription to Westlaw, which is it's a primary tool that attorneys use for researching case law. I'm still not an attorney, but I did note some citations and I'll provide that to the supervisors separately. I was going to go through just some bullet points on what the current state is today, but in the interest of time, I'll skip them. I do have copies of my remarks that I'll give to the supervisors, so those points are in there. So there were 3 points related to arguments against a moratorium that I'd like to address that were brought up last week. The first point, it was stated that we can't do a moratorium because we're not zoned across the county. I believe that's factually wrong. It was implied that the county could not implement the temporary moratorium on renewable energy projects because we don't have zoning across the county. I think the example that was given was Palo Alto had zoning so that they could pursue one, but we couldn't. I'm not sure where that statement came from, but I did review case law and it seems to be factually wrong. Courts have found that moratoriums on activities related to zoning for the purpose of study and enacting of zoning regulations is a legitimate legislative function of the Board of Supervisors. Iowa Supreme Court also found, and this is a quote, zoning determinations are a legitimate legislative function of City Council or County Board of Supervisors. And if the supervisors determine that there's a deficiency in existing ordinance and there's an urgent need to address that deficiency, then it's perfectly legitimate, and I would argue the duty of the supervisors to say we're temporarily going to pause on certain types of new projects that are subject to those deficiencies and contradictions and determine what zoning updates are necessary. Now, we can discuss separately what's a pending project versus ongoing project and so on, but simply put, a temporary moratorium is perfectly appropriate. It was also argued that it's too late for a moratorium since we've had wind development for years. I believe that's also wrong. There was concern expressed that the wind projects have been underway for years and continue to be underway, so it's too late for a temporary moratorium. I think that too is a red herring according to reality and case law. Each renewable energy project is a separate development. The development in Joyce in 2001 has nothing to do with the Freeborn wind development in Deer Creek right now. They're separate projects, just as the potential worthwhile wind project in the northwest areas of the county is separate from Deer Creek. A moratorium is not being proposed or recommended to halt development on an ongoing project. For example, I don't think anyone is advocating stopping construction of unfinished turbines in Deer Creek. Establishment of a temporary moratorium on these projects for new development where county agreements and permits have not been signed or issued and material construction has not begun does not violate vested interests and is perfectly appropriate and legal. And once again, in light of the deficiencies and inconsistencies across the county and outcries from citizens across the county, a temporary moratorium on new projects would be the duty of the supervisors until they can address those deficiencies and inconsistencies. There's strong legal grounds on which to enact an urgent interim moratorium to temporarily delay further development of these projects across the county so that a study and hearings can be conducted. The purpose being to determine what zoning ordinance updates may be necessary to promote the appropriate public health, safety, or welfare of county citizens and ensure that such projects are evaluated consistently across the county under the principle of equality under law. It's also required to ensure that zoning ordinances protect neighbors, something it does not do today. The Iowa Supreme Court said that the purpose of zoning, and this is a quote, is to meet and solve problems growing out of a principle that every owner of property holds it under implied liability, that his use of it shall not be injurious to equal enjoyment of others, having equal right to enjoyment of their property, nor injurious to rights of community. That was the Supreme Court statement. In other words, it's the responsibility of the supervisors through zoning to ensure that zoning provide equal protection of neighbors with regard to their rights and enjoyment of property. Third argument was that a moratorium would be costly if it went to court, so we shouldn't do one. Well, potentially, yes, but with regard to the concern of the cost to defend a moratorium, it first presupposes that there would be an extended court challenge. That discussion is not a capricious, permanent, or long-term moratorium. We're talking about a 2 to 3 month period whereby these known urgent discrepancies can be addressed. So I think a threat of a lawsuit seems premature. A moratorium for the purpose of determining zoning issues in itself is a zoning-related issue. The Iowa Supreme Court has on multiple occasions upheld legitimate exercise of zoning activities by the boards of supervisors. In fact, they caution challengers to zoning activities that, and this is a quote, to establish invalidity of a zoning ordinance, the challenger must show that the ordinance is unreasonable, arbitrary, capricious, or discriminatory with no reasonable relationship to the promotion of public health, safety, or welfare, unquote. It also found that the County Board of Supervisors, quote, exercises vested legislative powers attended by a strong presumption of validity, which means that if the ordinance is facially valid and reasonableness of enactment is fairly debatable, it must be allowed to stand, unquote. My point here is that I think the reality of a protracted legal battle against the type of a temporary moratorium, 2 to 3 months to hold the hearings, make the decisions, and move forward, I think that risk is low. Keep in mind, too, that the duty and legal obligation of the Board of Supervisors to carry out their elected functions to promote and protect the health, safety, and welfare of its citizens, exercise its zoning duties to help ensure that citizens can enjoy their property rights, and to ensure those rights are protected equally under the law across the county. Today, we don't have that situation. Failure to act by the supervisors opens a whole different can of worm and potential lawsuits, pitting neighbors against neighbor and citizens against the board for failure to act when they know there are problems. So the question then is, which legal risk is worse or higher? Now, there were 2 arguments that I noted against zoning updates. The first one said, we can't update zoning because we've not budgeted for the cost of zoning changes. Well, just because something is not budgeted does not mean that the action is still not necessary. Failure to act in the first place should not cause failure to act in the second. While I was interim zoning administrator last summer, I notified the supervisors of zoning discrepancies across the county and discrepancies between county plans and ordinance, as well as the outdated nature of the plans and ordinances. This was during fiscal year 2020, months before final budgeting of this year. Now, I realize there were multiple extenuating circumstances in the intervening period with regard to board membership, so it's not a surprise it was not addressed during budgeting. However, that's not a legitimate reason to kick an urgent requirement down the road, especially since we now have a fully seated slate of supervisors. Let's also consider the actual cost for an updated zoning ordinance. At most, we're talking some few thousands of dollars, and I doubt it's that much actually. Money sufficient to engage NICOG for assistance if that's necessary. Some expenditures for meeting of the zoning commission for drafting updates, and some public hearings. It's pretty small in the scheme of things. Frankly, I'd be surprised if the real costs were actually greater than $1,000, particularly since there are a number of zoning ordinances across counties in Iowa that have been written in the past 5 years related to renewable energy projects. So there's clear models out there for us to leverage. As for potential loss of revenue from projects that did not execute during a temporary moratorium, I think that too is a red herring. revenue from those projects don't come to the county until they're operational. So I question whether there would be an actual loss of revenue this year from a 2 to 3 month delay, if any, of some future project. Worst case, I suspect it would do nothing more than delay some future revenue that may come in a later year by a couple of months. And I would just close by saying that we can't base financial decisions on chickens that haven't hatched. The last point that was brought up that I noted, it was suggested that landowners should be the best ones to negotiate agreements with developers as opposed to county regulations. Well, kind of. But that's akin to saying that drivers are the best ones to determine how they should drive through town as opposed to traffic laws. It's kind of a silly statement. A wiser man than me once said, and I paraphrase, that men are not angels, so we need laws to govern a civil society. We have already seen actual pattern of bait and switch on setback distances by developers. It's also not the duty of my neighbor to look out for my rights. I hope he would, but that's not his primary responsibility. But it is the duty of my government to look out for and protect my rights. In fact, that's one of its primary duties. Saying that agreement between my neighbor and a development company is the best way to protect my rights, as opposed to common zoning, is simply wrong. I've read some of those landowner agreements. They're not protective of neighbors at all. In fact, if I were a landowner, I wouldn't sign one as they're currently written. They are clearly too protective of the developer. It stands then, to protect the rights of all, we must have laws which guide certain activities, else we have chaos, which is what we'll continue to have if we don't proceed as advocated. In closing, I know these are a couple of hot button topics and there's as many opinions as there are people, but I believe most of us can find common ground, and I don't think people are as far apart as might first seem. We need to get past emotions and talk through facts and details. The fact is, we have clear problems related to zoning that impact siting considerations for renewable energy projects. Those problems predate all of us and all of this and most of us, but it's for us to fix now. I don't understand how taking 2 to 3 months to address the primary deficiencies can be viewed as not appropriate. To that end, in addition to providing the supervisors a copy of these comments and detail on my citations, I've also taken the liberty of crafting language of an ordinance that could be used as an initial draft for an ordinance to accomplish what I've laid out. I'll provide a copy of that to the supervisors as well. I'd also like to point out that Invenergy and other development companies regularly submit applications that comply with the type of zoning ordinances that are under discussion. I know because I've seen those ordinances. They're online at other counties. Those applications are online at other counties. So such an ordinance in Worth County would not be an undue burden to them or other developers. I'd be happy to address any questions that you have on what I've stated, and I urge you to read the documents that I'll provide before you make your decisions. Thank you for your time and allowing me to present to the board, and feel free to contact me with any questions. Do you have any questions on what I've?
Yes.
No.
Not this time.
Zoning, we already have zoning in 3 townships.
Yes.
We could use that as our basis because it's already in
Yes,
place
that-
anyways. It's a county, it's already in
Yeah,
place. right?
that zoning ordinance was produced in 2009 as a result of guidance that was written in the comprehensive development plan that was approved by the board in 2006. That comprehensive development plan called for county-wide zoning ordinance in order to carry out that comprehensive plan. That's in accordance with Iowa law code 335. When that ordinance got to the Board of Supervisors, however, they determined to restrict the territorial scope of the ordinance to just the 3 townships. And they did so by simply adding a parenthetical statement underneath the title of the ordinance that said Danville, Heartland, and Brookfield townships. If that statement were stricken from the ordinance as it's written would be equally applicable across the county.
Sure.
Now, there's a clause in Iowa law, it's section 335.4 that talks about the need for zoning ordinances to be consistent across districts. So for instance, if you say we're going to have ag zones or ag districts. Iowa law says that the zoning restrictions, requirements that you put in place for that ag district, those have to be consistent across that district, across ag.
Yeah.
Today, we don't have that. And frankly, I'm not sure if the territorial restriction that we have to those 3 townships would pass a review under that 335.4. Because it doesn't address townships specifically. It doesn't say that you have to have all or none in the county, but it does say that your zoning requirements have to be consistent across the districts.
And right now, agricultural, there's an agricultural.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. I think it's crucially important for people to understand. Iowa law and the county's own zoning ordinance establishes an exemption for agricultural projects. So there was one example given last week, I think, about grain bins, right? We don't want to add extra requirements for a farmer to put up grain bins. Well, by Iowa law, if your project is in direct support of producing agricultural goods, it is exempt from zoning regulations.
Correct.
So even though zoning talks about structure setbacks or building codes and things of that nature, if what you're intending to do is in direct support of your production of agricultural goods, by law, it's exempt from zoning ordinance.
It's not exempt from the setback, so.
It's exempt from zoning ordinance and the setbacks are in the ordinance.
Yeah, the setbacks on windmills would be for everybody.
Yes, that would be
They wanna-
separate because
They
the,
want to put up a machine shed, they put up a machine. shed.
yes, yeah. So the packet that I have for the supervisors is what I just presented along with the citations. I've also included some information from the National Renewable Energy Library, which shows that Iowa is second only to Texas in wind turbines, and that they are in fact growing. In fact, Worth County is a prime area for larger turbines of the 140 meter size, which is nearly twice what we've got now. And then a draft of an ordinance that I think would provide you means to take care of the things. Other questions on
Anything else for
what
Jeff?
I've provided last week or stated today?
I just noticed that last week, the stuff that you gave us this county comprehensive development plan
Yes,
that was done back in 2006 by 12 individuals that were kind of spread out across the county.
Yeah.
And as you go through there, it says they got everything involved.
yes,
They discussed farmland, residential, everything else, and then they got goals in there. And when it comes to strategies, as far as what you should use in the making of an ordinance, when it comes to industrial development, it states right in there, which this really caught my eye. It says encourage and support the development and expansion of industry within the county that doesn't cause a nuisance or interfere with the existing quality of life for the surrounding neighbors and property owners. Way back in 2008, they were already thinking of this.
yeah. I would also note that in that development plan, that development plan was virtually silent with regard to these kinds of projects. It frankly was not anticipated. If you do a word search in that document of renewable energy projects, you won't find them. It wasn't addressed at all. In fact, the county zoning ordinance, when it was originally passed in 2009, didn't say anything at all about these things. That was the subject of an amendment at a later date that simply added an available conditional use permit for commercial wind turbines and solar energy. And that's all it said, was it's subject to a conditional permit. The problem that we have, however, is those conditional permits, those are adjudicated by the Board of Adjustment, and the Board of Adjustment has no guidelines with regard to siting considerations or anything. So It's just completely up to chance what may or may not come from each individual site.
And that's because it wasn't addressed in the original development plan.
It wasn't addressed in the original development plan nor in the zoning ordinance. And again, I'm suggesting that a temporary pause would be 2 to 3 months to get all this stuff done. Frankly, I think it could be done faster. The only reason I said 2 to 3 months is just the wheels of government sometimes turn slow. And, I'm accounting for, if there has to be multiple public hearings. Certainly these things need to be subject of public hearings. It's just a question of how many. But as far as the work necessary to identify and draft some updated language in the zoning ordinance, I think the zoning commission can do that rather quickly, because again, there's numerous examples of comprehensive zoning updates in the last 5 years by counties across Iowa.
Over the whole county though.
Yes,
They already had a plan in place.
well, they have a zoning ordinance, and so they have just updated their zoning ordinance to address renewable energy projects.
Over
Now,
the-
I think Worth County has 2 questions that have to be decided by the supervisors. One is, does our zoning ordinance need to have guidance with regard to renewable energy projects? I think the answer to that is, in my opinion, it's clear. It's void of answers. There's all kinds of opinions and pressure and concerns on the part of citizens. I think it is appropriate that that ordinance be updated. So that's question number 1. Question number 2 is, should the territorial scope of that ordinance be limited to the 3 townships of Heartland, Danville, and Brookfield, or should the territorial scope of the ordinance apply countywide? And I think that's a separate question.
Nyakog on today? Is he gonna talk? I mean, they could answer the question on
Yeah.
cost a little bit.
He's a little later on.
Yeah.
We can ask him on that.
Cause didn't come directly from Nyakog, but I emailed out to somebody that said it'll take anywhere from 9 to 24 months to update your zoning, and a cost from 10 to 20, depending on what you gotta do. You have a base, but that's what she said. So
I find that very difficult to understand.
Especially since we have it established in part of the.
You have the zoning ordinance. We have models of zoning ordinances. I know that we have the ordinance in editable form because I created one when I was zoning administrator. We could take, once the zoning commission determines what language would be appropriate, from those models, it would be a simple matter of somebody on the zoning, I'm on the zoning commission, I would volunteer to do it. I can copy, paste, and type and edit our zoning ordinance to bring it up to date. And it certainly wouldn't take me 10 to 20 months or $10,000 to do so.
assume they have to be done by somebody with legal. I mean,
Well, I think it would have to be reviewed by legal.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It'd be in our best interest
And
to
it-
get it reviewed by.
Yeah, it would have to be reviewed by legal, and certainly there would be, it would be appropriate because of the nature of the changes for public hearings on it, on the part of the zoning commission. And then it's still up to the board of supervisors, whether or not to accept those changes.
Correct.
Yeah, we definitely want somebody from legal with windmill.
Yeah.
That's done this before to look at this.
Right. But again, if we leverage existing ordinances that have been written in the past 5 years to help guide our language, it streamlines the process significantly. We're not starting from scratch.
There's no use recreating the wheel.
We don't have to on this one. Anything else
Other
for Jeff?
questions?
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks for your
Thank you,
time.
Jeff.
All right, next on the agenda would be Sue Loken.
Thank you to the supervisors for the opportunity to address the board. I am Sue Loken, and my family and I live and farm in Heartland Township. And today I'm here to request that the board of supervisors establish a temporary moratorium on wind and turbines. Form a diverse committee of Worth County residents to research reasonable regulations that protect the rights of landowners as well as rural residents, and establish regulations for industrial wind turbines in Worth County. In his 1914 poem, Mending Wall, Robert Frost coined the phrase, "Good fences make good neighbors." In the poem, not only does a good fence establish boundaries, but neighbors working together to build the fence establish relationships and respect for each other. In that same frame, good industrial wind regulations make good neighbors. The residents of Worth County are asking the board to form a diverse committee to research and establish reasonable regulations for any future industrial wind turbines. These new massive turbines are not your grandfather's windmills, nor are they the smaller turbines found in Joyce and Kensett. Near 500 feet in height, their mechanical noise, aerodynamic noise, flicker effect, flashing lights, and infrasound can be heard, seen, and felt for miles. And those living in close proximity are largely impacted by these massive industrial power generators. As a county, we need to take the time necessary to research, observe, and evaluate the impact these industrial turbines have on those living among them. We need to learn about noise thresholds, effects of flicker, health impacts, and possible decline in home values. It is not up to Big Wind to tell us what is tolerable, but for the citizens of Worth County to determine what is unobtrusive to their daily lives. You can drive out east with your window down and think, this isn't too bad. But those living among the turbines hear and see them every second, every minute, every hour of every day. They cannot roll up their window and drive away. Also, please consider that without regulations, the older, smaller existing turbines can be changed out for larger versions. Residents who currently feel that the small turbines near them aren't obtrusive may face larger, louder ones in the near future. Another question to consider is, how many turbines do we want in our county? Do we need to have a turbine on every 10 acres in the county? Big Wind has come back to Worth County over and over again because we are unregulated. They will continue to do so until regulations are established. Why would they go to another county to harvest wind when Worth County has given them unprecedented, unregulated access to any land where they can obtain an easement? Without regulations, Big Wind does not need to avoid conservation regions, does not need to consider wildlife, and does not need to respect neighbors. I have spoken with landowners who felt they were misled by Big Wind Industries and pressured to sign up for the wind turbines. After seeing the devastating situations in the Freeborn Wind Project, they regret signing their rights to their land over to Big Wind. I've also spoken with Worth County residents who believe we need a moratorium and regulations, but could not sign the letter supporting a temporary moratorium for fear of personal and business repercussions. Today, Invenergy is going to propose that they put 1,500-foot setbacks into their roadway contract with Worth County. Their hope is that the county will then not proceed with a temporary moratorium. They're going to tell you that the noise levels of rural residents living among turbines are no worse than for residents living in a city. However, rural Worth County residents have chosen the quietness of rural living and not the industrial city life. Invenergy is going to say that they have already invested in the worthwhile wind farm project, and they're going to threaten the county with lawsuits to try to prevent the county's right and responsibility to enact a moratorium and establish regulations. They're going to say that because they dug 2 holes in Silver Lake Township, they are under construction, so a moratorium would not apply to the project in the northwest portion of the county. I would like to remind the Board of Supervisors that a conditional use permit is required in Heartland, Brookfield, and Danville Townships. A permit and hearing for each and every turbine proposed. Invenergy has not applied for or received a permit. If Invenergy has invested funds prior to receiving a permit, that is bad business on their part, not a liability on the part of the county. To quote Maya Angelou, "I did then what I knew how to do. Now that I know better, I do better." At the time the Worth County Ordinance 18-12-3 titled Renewable Energy Provisions was established, the Board of Supervisors thought they were making a good decision for the county. However, after a few years of Big Wind having free reign throughout the county, it has become apparent that we now know that Ordinance 18-12-3 was not in the best interest of the Worth County citizens. The repeal of Ordinance 18-12-3 is necessary, but the moratorium is also necessary. Without it, the entire northwest portion of the county will be subjected to the unilateral decisions of Big Wind, the company that misled landowners, used high-pressure sales tactics, and placed turbines in locations less than 1,000 feet from homes. These are not the people who get to determine our county's regulations. The bad business practices of Big Wind have left Worth County residents with feelings of anger and frustration and are pitting neighbor against neighbor. Worth County Board of Supervisors and citizens of Worth County together, let's establish a moratorium on industrial wind turbines. Let's form a diverse committee, including the Board of Supervisors, Board of Health, County Conservation, and residents of Worth County to establish reasonable regulations that protect the rights of landowners as well as rural residents. And let's establish regulations for industrial wind turbines in Worth County. Thank you for your time and attention to this very important issue. Now that we know better, let's build good fences together. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
I do have, I knew that I wasn't the only one in the county feeling this way, and I just put out feelers through Facebook. No big adventure to try to grab names. And to date, we have 318 people residing in Worth County who say, we need a moratorium, we need to look at this. And this is, like I said, we didn't go door to door or anything like that. This is people who heard that I was putting this list together and said, add me to the list. So I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you, Sue. All right, next on the list is Mark Crowell from Invenergy. Give us an update on the Worthwhile Wind project. Hello, Mark, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Take this off. Is that all right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. Like you mentioned, my name is Mark Crowell. I don't know if I met everybody in the room yet, but I'm a renewable development manager with Invenergy. I'm also the lead developer for the Worthwhile Wind project here in the county. I've had a great privilege of working in Worth County for the last couple of years. So ever since I've come on with Invenergy, I've had a role working on projects in the county and had the great pleasure of making a lot of really fantastic relationships with the people here that go beyond the project. So today I'm here to talk about the Worthwhile Wind project, but in essence, I'm also talking on behalf of our nearly 200 participating landowners as well. Sure. Yeah. With that, there have been some I will get, at the end of here, have some time for questions and updates on the project. And there's definitely been some points today on zoning and regulation and the project. So I did want to touch base on that briefly. Was mentioned last week, I believe it was last Wednesday. Our attorney had sent along a letter to Mr. Dreve that detailed Invenergy and the Worthwhile Wind position on moratoriums and any subsequent change to zoning ordinance. So I wanted to start here by just making our position clear and having an opportunity to talk about that. The Worthwhile Wind doesn't believe that any sort of passing of a moratorium, whether it be temporary or permanent, or any subsequent change to the zoning ordinance would be applicable to our project. It's based on a vested rights concept that under Iowa law, we've done a handful of development activities that were described in the letter that was sent last Wednesday. And because of that, our project has the ability to develop and continue to move forward under that set of regulations and rules. So I just wanted to make that clear here at the beginning and then go through and have what our company believes would be, a common sense and middle ground solution, even with that being the backdrop. As I watched last week and zoomed into the meeting, I saw a couple themes, really. I looked and I saw that there's not necessarily this idea and desire to totally halt wind development in the county. That there wants to be that the supervisors in this room, that the folks and the county are looking for ways that would provide protections that aren't necessarily there to date, while also protecting neighboring residences and those that would live in or near and around the project. I also saw that there might have been a little bit of fear on some of the landowners' perspectives, that if you read some information about wind projects and topics from the web on infrasound, different flicker standards and kind of you name it, that as a project like this starts to gain a little bit more recognition in the county, that people want to see meaningful discussion and make sure that this project or any project is going to be something that's going to be good for not only those that elected to participate, but also the county at large. So with that, as Ms. Loken mentioned, we are proposing and have proposed a development agreement that we sent along this past Wednesday. And so that was based on the Freeborn Road and drainage agreement that was signed by the supervisors previously. We did that to kind of keep it, keep it fairly straightforward and then be able to provide an avenue for a meaningful discussion on topics that were spoken about last week, and use it as a platform for any future discussions that the supervisors or those with a strong opinion will be able to provide and again engage in some form of meaningful construction or meaningful conversation. With that and with that agreement being the base, we had added some language on restoration, that at the end of the project, that all of the property that would be in this potential wind project, if it continues to move on and gain the necessary approvals, at the end of its life cycle would be restored to a condition as it is today. We added a very conservative 1,500-foot setback from residential properties in the area to give those protections that people are looking for from all of the previously stated potential disturbances that were mentioned earlier. In addition to that, and in conversations that I had following last week's meeting, we also added in a 50 dBA noise standard to that as well, to continue to provide certainty to neighboring residences that our project will continue to be developed and potentially in the future here be sited in a very responsible and proactive way. So with that as the backdrop, and to kind of summarize here, even though it's our stance that any sort of moratorium or subsequent ordinance change would not apply to our project, we want to learn from the conversations that are happening, learn from projects that have been here before, build off the positive benefits that wind has brought to Worth County, and provide a middle ground, a pathway that allows folks to continue to make the best decision for what they want to do on their property, allows protections for neighboring landowners, and allows all the great benefits for wind to come into the county. I think that this is a great way to engage in that negotiation, engage in conversations where at the end of the day, we can have a project where people think, hey, this was well looked after, it was responsibly sited, and it's going to be good for most, if not all, the folks in the county there. So to conclude, I'm here for any sort of questions on the project. It's our stance, that any temporary moratorium, would be voted down, and we're happy to be here to negotiate and kind of work through what a good development process would be for the Worthwhile Wind project. But if you have any questions at all on the project, on anything, I'm here. And yeah.
Well, I want to first of all say thank you for opening up the line of communication. I've noticed in your letters, you've spoke with various county officials, and I'm glad that I'm now on that list, because I haven't talked to you much, Mark. We've talked a few times on the phone, maybe 3 times in the last 2 years. So I kind of felt like I wasn't going to get talked to because I've always had these questions. I'm not anti-wind. I've been called anti-wind by your attorney, and I don't like that. Because I'm not. But I am out for regulations. I'm out for property rights for people too. Okay, so I do appreciate you coming in and opening up this communication. Unfortunately, this road agreement thing and development agreement, I would like to look at a little closer, because anyone to, in my eyes, this is my personal opinion, anyone that writes something up as an agreement or something usually has their needs in favor of others. So I want to make sure that it addresses the county's needs just as much as it does the developer's needs. I want to make sure that's right. Because if we just look at it, you know what I mean? It just always appears to me that the guy making the writing it has always got their needs first.
Sure.
And I think our county's needs need to be first. So, and as far as your interest in this, your vested interest, what is your vested interest? Where are we at with, I haven't seen a map of where any turbines are gonna go. We haven't heard anything of that. I mean, so where are you
Sure.
guys at in this project phase? Are you still what I would consider preliminary, or do you have information that you can say we plan on putting them here?
So we're getting closer to that point, you know, and to respond briefly to, I mean, that's the point of what this is meant to do, to be able to serve as a foundation for good, meaningful conversation to, at the end of the day, find a middle ground that would work between what the county wants, protections that people are looking for, without stifling development of a project that's been here and been working through for some time. So we're here to try and come and know that there are strong opinions on both sides, and then be here to engage in that conversation and come to something that's mutually agreeable. We touched on it a little bit in the letter that was sent, but we've done a lot of different things so far. So, I mean, our developments in the county started in 2018. We've continually moved through and progressed. We've held multiple landowner meetings throughout that time, met with various officials about the project. I had some meetings with folks as soon as I came on with the company in 2019, just to to get a better idea and start to establish a feel for what was important to the folks here in North County. We've erected a handful of met towers that measure the speed of the wind. One of those went through the county permitting process and received a permit for that. One of them was in the unzoned portion of the county. We've got a workable footprint. You know, we call it 99% complete, because as some of this has happened, there's been some phone calls that have come into me that said, hey, you know, I was maybe on the fence, but I really want to be in on the project. I want to be on this and support everything that this project is going to bring. So we're still kind of working through the last couple agreements that we want to finish before we can say, okay, we're kind of closing down the signing process, but that's really only because we've had a more increased interest over the last couple of weeks and have had that happen. As you mentioned, we had also already poured two turbine foundations in late 2020, starting what we call a limited start of construction. And so we're before this, and a little bit of the reason why there was a less degree of communication was that I know, and our company knows, that there are folks that are concerned in the county. So I didn't want to provide information or all of these potential turbine locations or heights or anything like that to get people worried without saying, okay, this is actually where it's going to go. So then we can have some of those meaningful conversations. We were in a preliminary stage prior to, you know, getting the land completed, and really prior to us doing that limited construction. And I would say we're, you know, into the mid or later stages now. So we're starting to design the project, and we're looking to have something for the county to review here that would be actual locations. And we could look at actual potential impacts to areas from that, not just saying these blanket statements about shadow, about noise that are largely inadequate or inaccurate, and that, you know, we want to keep the conversation around what would actually be happening here. Yeah. So that's going to come up pretty soon. We've done a lot to date, and we're in the transition phase to start moving towards getting some information so that we can continue to have those meaningful discussions.
So why did you dig the foundations in there to get limited start? I mean, not knowing if you're even gonna do it, or were you guys pretty confident that you were gonna do it, so you went ahead and dug holes in the ground?
Well, I mean, we really like the project. Obviously, you know, we've been here for a while, and there's some other review processes that happen. You know, the project in its ability to interconnect on the grid has to go through this review process that takes years. That's starting to look a little bit more favorable. We've kind of marched through a couple of the key decision gates in recent months. And then as that started to happen, we were able to do that, to initially start construction, and there's a handful of different tax purposes for it. So it's a little bit of a, our commitment to developing a project in the county and wanting to continue to take the next steps that are logical to do that. And then kind of layering in some of the other things that the project, the financials of the project need to take into consideration.
So safe to say you got started, so we couldn't change anything.
No, I mean, that was not the intent. It was a project specific action, if you will, to make the project the best that it can. So not in any sort of way to undermine the processes of the county, just to make sure that as our project continues to develop, as it has from 2018 through time, that at the end of the day, hopefully after some meaningful conversation with the folks in this room, that we have a project that's positioned to be the best that it can be on all levels. So that's purely what it was meant for.
Okay. So you guys officially started this project in 2018,
Yes.
that's correct?
Our first agreements were signed in 2018. We've got 196 agreements signed to date, with 170 of those agreements in the county, with more coming in the door.
Okay. So I mean, it just, that was before me, so I got in and I won the election in 18, got started in 19, so that's why, and I had heard rumor about it, but that's all the farther it ever usually went with me. So our zoning issues, our comprehensive development plan back in 2006, specifying that we should be looking into countywide zoning. I think it may be safe to say that we've been working on zoning since 2006. This
Sure.
board has, not me personally. Not this board personally, but the county as a whole has brought that up and brought that attention, but it's never been really acted on. So wouldn't you say the county has invested rights in zoning and doing this just as much as you guys do?
So I personally am not an attorney either. So on that front, there definitely need to be somebody to weigh in. The only thing I would say is that there were rules and regulations in place from that time up until the present. So we're acting and developing on those rules and regulations that were in place. And if those hadn't been changed in that period of time, then I think it would be different.
But you could, I mean, like I said,
I
I'm not an
understand where
attorney
you're
either,
coming
you
from.
know. I think this county was starting to invest in this back in 2006. And unfortunately, it didn't get moved along. So that's just my thought,
Sure.
as far as the county side of it.
Yeah, it's just maybe just a little bit different too, with the county having the ability to change the rules and regulations that are in place, like you're potentially proposing, and then the Worthwhile Wind Project not having any such ability. So we're subject to the laws in place. And so it is a little bit different. We don't have the ability to change things on behalf of Worth County, but what we are saying is that we do have a vested interest to work and develop a project under the rules that were in place whenever we started.
Okay. But it does make total sense, and I agree. And obviously, we need to have some attorneys look at some of this stuff a little closer, but and I know when you guys go out and do your work, your legwork, you get the leases all signed up, then you usually push this on to a different developer, or you consider the developer, and then Mid-American or XL, whoever you sell the project to, consider the developer.
So we're the developer. So we develop the project, and that's my role and what the company's role is. Those are the operating partners of the project. They can be, different utilities and different structures, but those would be more of the operators where we develop the project. And we also do have operations arms of our company, being a large privately held renewable developer. We have kind of the ability to do the whole host of life cycle steps, if you will, as you go from development into construction and then into the operations as well.
Okay. So is it the developer or the operator that changes their mind in the middle of the game, like happened out here in Deer Creek? Because there was extra turbines that got brought in that weren't initially a part of it.
Mhm.
And some of those extra turbines got put way too close to houses. I found one, 817 feet
Mhm.
from a gentleman that doesn't live in the county. So guess where his voice is? On the wrong side of the street.
Sure.
Some of these other ones they're extra. They got put in way too close to these houses. You guys, I shouldn't say you guys, whoever it may be, the developer or the operator, somebody changed the rules in the middle of the game too. And I hope that you guys can consider that by us changing the rules doesn't make us, I mean, I guess we could fight about it because that happened over there.
Sure.
To me, it's something that if you can change the rules in the middle of the game, why can't we try to make better rules for everybody in the middle of the game?
Sure. I mean, that's a very respectable point. You know, we, at the time when those changes happened, they were not under the developer scope. So we didn't do those changes. I can't speak on behalf of the current construction crew that's out there. I didn't develop the Freeborn project and wasn't with the company when that was happening. But what I can say is that we see those things. We see how that has caused concern here in the county. And so what I want to do as a developer is come in here and take that issue off the table and be able to say here in this development agreement that we're proposing, that if you all elected to go down that route, then that would be a protection that you would not see happen with the Worthwhile Wind project. And so we're trying to learn now that we have seen and know, we want to do better based on what has happened in the county so far. So that's what I'm here proposing to you today, to negotiate that, to have this platform, to be able to have those meaningful discussions. So you can tell me, hey, Mark, this is an issue, you know, and this is something that we either want to we want you to look into it more. We want information or studies that are applicable to this project and to these locations, so that at the end of the day, you can be comfortable with how this project would be put in place. And so it's going to be different than that one, because we're trying to take a more proactive approach here today so that those issues aren't in place. We're trying to do the best we can.
Down at Kensett, it was said that you made a verbal commitment to the citizens of Worth County to stay 1,500 feet away from any residence, occupied or unoccupied. Everybody that I've talked to in Deer Creek said the land agents told them the same thing. I got in a heated discussion with a land agent about it. Why wasn't it in your contract? These contracts are for 20 years, right?
Yeah. I mean,
And then you can re-up for another 20.
Mhm.
In 10 years down the road, or when you sell it off to somebody else, where's the 1,500 feet? Where's it gonna be set in there that is that way? And did you guys design that project out there then?
I can't comment on it because I wasn't on that team. I wasn't in the company at that time. So I don't know who did the design, who did.
Wouldn't that be passed
engineering.
down?
I mean, it is to a certain extent, but then also, I'm not able to comment on that. I wasn't part of that process. So, but what I can say is that if you want a 1,500 feet, you want that verbal commitment that is now put into something with teeth, that's exactly what we're doing here.
And
So
I
we're not
read
trying
that in the
to,
deal that you sent.
so we're not trying to shy away from the verbal commitments that we made. We're instead trying to make sure that we have that in a spot and in a position so that you can feel comfortable that, that was verbal at one point in time, but now it is in this development agreement that we're going to be bound and governed by. And so we want to make sure and do that so that this county has that protection.
I had 2 different people this week email me your presentation down at Kensett. That's your name right down there. In here, it shows top Iowa 1 and the total height of the windmills. It shows different ones. And as the windmills went up, the residential setback got farther away. In Freeborn, you have a 453-foot total height on the tower and the windmill. You got a minimum residential setback of 2,000 feet. We use 1,500 feet as a minimum. That's what I've heard from everybody out there.
Mhm.
When it comes to the Worthwhile project, which I guess is west of town, you've got a 607-foot total height and a minimum residential setback of 2,000 feet. if you've got that in there, when your lawyers did this at 1,500 feet, wouldn't you put 2,000 feet in there? Because it also says in there that you have a right to go to everybody out there that owns a home and get a variance on it, which I have no problem with.
Mhm.
I think that's acceptable. In
Sure.
other words, if somebody signs up for your windmills on their property and they want to move them closer to their house than the acreage owner over here, I think that's great.
Mhm. So, I didn't give that presentation. That is.
But it was your company
Correct.
and it
That
was the
is.
man before you, right?
Yeah, I believe it was. So speaking of, the turbines and the sizes and as they continue to potentially get larger, first thing, we do those things to be able to provide an idea for people who are genuinely interested in the project. What would this one look like going forward? So as we're trying to get information and get it out to the local community so people can be better informed to make their own decisions, we need to do and kind of walk through some of these items that show how is worthwhile wind going to be different than what is in place in Worth County today. And that's really important for this project because the turbines are going to be larger. And so you have a host of actual benefits that come from that. So you have fewer turbines for the same type of output. You have fewer spots and locations within a project where potential impact would happen on the residents. And all of the windfall agreements that come after that, or windfall benefits that come after that. So when we propose these things, what we're trying to do is really a good faith effort to show people and educate the folks that are interested in the county, what would this project look like and how would it be different? We don't have the final turbine height selected yet. There's kind of a lot that goes into selecting the types of turbines, but that was us trying to get ahead of the project. And when did you say, was that 2018?
This was in June of 2018.
So from the very beginning, we were trying to reach out and educate the folks of Worth County. And so those are the types of things too that I'm saying now that I would like to avoid. And that now that we do have buy-in, people understood that these are going to be larger, there's going to be some differences between other projects. Now, I would like to keep the conversation with this group on the actual potential impacts on the actual turbine locations and not kind of the general specifics of it. So, if you really look at it, we start with educating people, having those one-on-one negotiations, having those conversations to try and figure out, what folks want to see in any given agreement and if they want to participate in a project. And then as we continue to march forward, we'll have more specific and refined conversations that I'm proposing that we engage in this development process or this development agreement. And then we can look into detail of the actual turbine location so that some of your fears might not be realized because yes, the turbines are going to be larger, but it gives us more flexibility. It gives us, the ability to have fewer spots of potential impact in a project.
At the time, I talked to a land manager down there and I said, where can I go to see windmills this tall? And he said there wasn't any in the United States. This was new. Is that still true?
Yeah, these are fairly new. Looking at a project that would potentially be operational in the 23 or 24 timeframe. These are the new cutting edge technology. Is it St. Ansgar? Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay, so those are larger turbines as well. So that would be something that you could go at and look at.
And I was over and looked at them.
Okay, so yeah, you can see a distinct difference between top of Iowa 1 and 2 and those as well. And so while the exact type of turbine is not located there, that gives you a better idea about what this project would see. As far as size, impact, how far they're spread out and how different it is from the other projects in the county.
The biggest thing that the residents have hit me with the last 2 weeks is considering these turbines haven't been in the United States this big. How do we know what we should have for decibels? How do we know what we should have for setback?
And I think that's it. This is a perfect example of why this is a great opportunity and why, we think that this is a good medium and mode to work through what would be a reasonable standard. because all of these have different types of, or a reasonable process with the development agreement. All of these have varying sound levels that accompany them. We can put together reports that show, hey, we're gonna put a turbine at these different levels. These are the locations of all of the different residences around this potential turbine location. And then these would be the noise levels that you would see at those locations. So then we could show you, hey, you can now, look at this project and see that there's little to no impact from a sound level or some of these other issues that frequently get brought up, or concerns that get brought up. And that's what we're gonna try and kick off here, what we would like to kick off with this project, so we can give you the absolute maximum amount of information for you to make a better informed decision. And we feel extremely strongly that at the end of the day, when you review those things and you look at the proactive development approach we've taken to date, that, our approach will stand for itself, and that you can feel confident about the worthwhile project.
So if we were to do all of this research, as far as the height and the decibels and the setback and the whole 9 yards,
Mhm.
then you would have no problem having it in a zoning ordinance that we can get together on.
So, again, it doesn't necessarily change our stance.
Oh, I
that-
realize that. I'm just asking you that, if our zoning ordinance accommodates your windmills, there would be no problem there to have them. To just say, hey, let's hold off, let's discuss this, let's have a moratorium, and we'll just hold everything down. He just got done saying within 4 months, it's not gonna set you back like the end of the earth. The world's not perfect. Everybody's got to give and take here. And I also am not totally against windmills.
Mhm.
If you want windmills, I don't care. There's a lot of people that don't like the landscape and everything else, but hey, I can live with the windmills out there. They have down in Joyce and every place else. It's the sound. You don't see a big complaint going on about solar, although there's people that are not happy about solar.
Mhm.
It's the total sound. And then we got a Deer Creek project that just went completely sideways.
Mhm.
I got a couple more questions. He also talked about flicker down there.
Excuse me,
Yeah, Jeff.
just a brief interruption. I'll be leaving this week for the 10 days. I've got a hearing on the telephone here in about 10 minutes. Is there any questions or concerns that have come up on any of the projects that I've been involved with that need to be addressed before I leave early Thursday?
There's probably some stuff we'd like to have you look at, but it may take more than a day or two.
Okay,
But I guess as far as I'm concerned, no,
I don't
we
have
get,
anything.
we've got a lot more to discuss, Jeff. But understand the timing and you going on vacation, we don't want to interrupt that either, so,
no,
be prepared for, maybe a grocery list when you get back.
no, that's fine. I love email, so if we've got something, just let me know. Everyone take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mark.
You have
Oh,
the technology to put the flicker on, right?
How do you mean?
Well, I understand
You mean
what I've read
flashing-
off the
flashing
internet.
lights?
No, where people get shadow flicker going across their
Okay.
kitchen window.
Sure.
When they get up in the morning and it's going like this all day long, it gets
Sure.
long. You have the technology to do that. Why wasn't that done out? In other words, we know that this windmill's sitting right here from this lady's house. When the sun comes up in the morning, it's gonna cause a problem. So shut the windmill down until it gets away from her house and turn it back on for the rest of the day.
Sure. So,
There's all kinds of stuff. Then you talked about serrated blades. And I went onto the internet and at 500 hertz, it cuts 4 to 6 decibels of sound off. You're already talking about a setback with a 50 decibel. You're cutting it by 10% right off the top. Why wouldn't you keep sound to a minimum? Why wasn't all that done out here in Deer Creek?
again, I can't comment on the Deer Creek project. I didn't develop the project.
Right, but if
I'm
we
not
had-
constructing the project, I personally, I don't have any connection with the project at all. But what I can tell you is what we're gonna do better here and what we can do to provide those types of insight and analysis for you so that you know that that's not not going to be the case here at the Worthwhile Wind Project. So, you know, as far as noise and flicker, a 1,500-foot setback
Or
largely
larger.
diminishes or completely reduces or eliminates those types of interference, potential interference for the project. You know, flicker in general, there's, you know, besides potentially having, like you said, some shadows in a window, it is, trying to think how to say this. You know, one, there's no health impacts. There's no scientifically reviewed or substantiated literature that perpetuates anything related to a moving shadow and health impacts. And I'd be happy to give you some information on that and engage in more of a lengthy discussion on that if that's something you're concerned about. The 1,500-foot setback, like I said, either greatly reduces or eliminates that potential issue. Flicker potentially occurs as the sun arches from east to west throughout the day. So it's found more in the mornings, early morning or late of an evening, whenever the sun is lowest on the horizon, projecting a larger potential shadow around. It's more prominent in certain types or certain portions of the year, and you know, with large parts of the year, little to no impact. So I can tell you for certain today that this project will not have some sort of constant shadow from blades that's on a home to where it's a nuisance. And there's no like firm benchmark, but typically speaking, at least 99% of the time, you're not going to have any sort of shadow from flicker from these turbines. And we'd be happy to look at a study that looks at these exact locations, does the exact projection, and we'll be able to tell you the exact number if that's something that you're interested in. So that you can know, we could take it out of this just being a fear and point to exactly what it would be like at that given location.
That's what's going on right now. We can't get enough information because we got residents out there that are going, hold it. We have no idea how big these things are. We haven't been told. And all this stuff happened out in Deer Creek. They talked about this all down at Kenseth, about the serrated blades to cut down on the sound, a lot of this stuff. And since then, and that is the red flashing lights. I understand there's now a way of, with the FAA shutting that stuff down, so that's not going all the time.
Yep. So there is, I mean, with any type of turbine lighting, it is federal law requires coordination with the FAA. So you essentially file these given turbine locations, their associated height. The FAA will review that set of locations in relation with air traffic in the area to determine what type of lighting features are required to make sure that that facility would be safe for operating aircraft. So I can't say today that, you know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, you know, yes, we would use some sort of new technology. Those are available and we can continue to talk about that. But then the FAA at the end of the day is going to need to sign off on what would work for this area, taking into account the air traffic and location of different types of facilities in the area.
So as you pass these projects down the line, if Worth County would have had ordinances in there to start with, as the project gets passed down the line, they would all fell under Worth County ordinances, and we wouldn't have had what happened out in Deer Creek.
You know, but potentially.
That's a potential.
But what you know, what I'm here to talk about today, kind of what I want to continue to bring as a common theme for why I'm here to talk is that, you know, you might have some, you know, concerns. You want some things that are, you want to look into things a little bit more. And then I'm proposing a development agreement, and to be able to negotiate those things in this agreement so that you can see the accurate and true information about these projects and their potential and unsubstantiated impacts on any type of neighboring property. And we're so confident with those facts and the science and information behind it that, you know, we'll continue to go through that process. And as we get those final footprints put together, we can give you all that information so that you'll know that, you know, this isn't just Mark Kraut here talking about it. This is something that's gonna happen in reality.
So you'll be going back to all the people that you've already talked to and putting this in the contract, is that right?
So, you know, we could go through, I mean, it is a lengthy amendment
Yeah.
process. I think we would prefer to just keep it in a development agreement, because it would cover all of those agreements anyway.
Okay.
Open to discussion on that, and future conversations.
Is it 1,500 feet from the home boundary or the property boundary?
The home,
The home boundary,
yeah, and occupied residents.
just like the master matrix.
And that's not negotiable.
Yeah, I think we're pretty firm in that. You know, we didn't start with that with the assumption that, you know, there would be a large amount of room to negotiate. We tried to do that and being proactive as to, hey, what is something that's going to be workable that the supervisors here in the room can see as us taking a proactive step to address these concerns. So there's a lot of information that we can provide about why a 1,500-foot setback would be completely adequate. And before changing or having any sort of information that would point to a need to increase that, you know, would like to get that information to you all so that you can see that information and know, you know, that again, what I'm saying is factual.
Well, then the environmental council did a study. And back in the latest I've seen from that study is back in 2017, Cassuth County passed a wind turbine or renewable energy
Mhm.
ordinances. And in there alone, and that was before you guys were even here in 18, and these big windmills came along, theirs is already at 16.
Mhm. So,
And as long as you get a variance in there, I don't see why we have to be locked in at 15. I would think that would be negotiable.
sure. I mean, and that can be, we can definitely continue to talk about it. All this is negotiable. You know, we'll say there's 18 counties in Iowa that do have different types of setback requirements, and 1,500 feet is more than 17 of them. So this isn't us trying to have some small setback. You know, when you look at other counties in Iowa that have adopted, you know, any type of ordinance here, this would be more. Also, the most recent the Iowa Environmental Council, they requested anywhere from a 10 to 1,250 foot setback based on their most recent information. So even with that as the backdrop of something that we're not connected with, you know, we still propose 1,500 feet as a level above and beyond what third-party groups in Iowa are saying is an adequate setback. So we're trying to be a responsible developer here because we know it's a concern for you and your constituents and people that would potentially reside next to it.
You said the environmental council did that?
Iowa Environmental Council, Iowa Environmental Council, yeah.
Yep.
I printed one off that Jackie sent us and read it. You hadn't had time to read it, but you gave us information.
Yeah, I can, right here, it just says, we recommend setbacks from residential dwellings of between 1,000 and 1,250 feet at the most.
But it also says back in here that any windmill developer, a 1,500 foot setback doesn't constrict him whatsoever on page, well, there's a page on it. It says it's therefore a minimum setback of 1,000 feet from occupied structures is recommended for safety purposes. But wind developers have indicated that a setback of 1,500 feet represents the upper limit of what is typically workable for designing a utility scale wind project.
1,500 feet
1,500 feet
is the upper limit, is what,
they're suggesting, and I don't know when I can't get a date off of this thing.
again, I mean, and I think that points to us trying to be respectful, proactive developers and coming in from the beginning and saying, hey, we're gonna do what would be the upper end. We're gonna do the 1,500 feet because, you know, again, we respect the folks in the area and want to be responsible developers.
But you didn't pass it on out there, and we got a mess.
I
And
understand.
I know that you've realized, but
Yes,
that
sir.
should have been in the contract.
Yes, sir. I wish I could speak to that in more detail. I really do. I personally can't, but what I can do, and again, what I'm trying to do is do something better this next time around. I've got some information, just I can give to you to read and look at. I don't know if you all, there's I think 3 handouts here in total, but just kind of food for thought to think about that provides a good base and foundation for, hopefully what would be some meaningful discussion on the topic. But I know you guys are getting a lot of information from lots of different groups, and want to use this platform as a way to be able to give you the accurate and true information for how these projects are. 2 more in here.
Mark, I know you spend most of your days developing these and talking with landowners before the stuff is built. Have you ever been back to a project after it's completed?
Yeah.
And
So
you looked around and
I do, there's been a handful prior to me working with Invenergy. I worked for a large competitor called NextEra Energy. There, I developed projects in my home state of Oklahoma and Texas and Kansas. So some of the initial projects that I worked on, went back to see them go through, and still get phone calls today from those folks, just checking in and making sure things are going well. So, a couple of those with Invenergy specifically, I do a lot of solar projects. I've got a handful of wind projects, but whether I develop them personally or not, the company definitely has a lot of successful wind projects around the country.
well, I just wondered if you've actually sat down and listened to these very large turbines that are very new in the United States. Sounds like we may be one of the first batches of them.
One of these.
But I do have some landowners that I could give you their addresses, and they would love to have you come out and sit on their front porch.
Yeah.
Just to see how important these setbacks are and how important this stuff really is, because once that thing is built, it's done.
Mhm.
It's done and over with. I tried to get one moved, a new one that came into the area from Freeport County. They didn't want it. 980 feet. I asked Excel, is there any way it can be moved? This is way too close to somebody's house. Sorry, sir, there's nothing we can do. And I don't need to hear that anymore. So I mean, my opinion is maybe you and maybe some of your other guys in the corporate office that I don't know whether they get out to these or not, need to go out to these houses and sit down and really see if it's enjoyable, see if it's how they would like to live too. Because at the end of the day, that's how our people around here are gonna have to start living it, whether they want to or not, and that's not right with me.
Well, and if you have folks that, might not be a big supporter of wind project or want to know more about it, I am always happy to speak with people that I know are not supporters, and talk about different ways that we can kind of go through the process, hear their concerns, see what it is, and see if there are things that we can do. In Iowa, I've been here working for some time, but like I said, I do live in Oklahoma, and I am around turbines all the time. Iowa's the second. I think Oklahoma is the third windiest state. Some of my best friends that I was in the military with live outside Oklahoma City. I go there all the time to visit them. We go hunting and fishing out there, and there's in Western Oklahoma a lot of these. So I spend a considerable amount of time in and around them.
Well, I would like whoever did develop that project out there, since it wasn't you who was ever in charge, put them in contact with me, please.
Yes, sir.
I would just like to ask how some of these turbines got put so dang close to these houses and why.
Sure.
I'm not gonna stop until I find out an answer why.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
gonna push as hard as I can, so this does not ever happen again.
I can try and get some information from folks, or at least, try and give you some contacts to reach out to, but I completely understand where you're coming from, and that's in large part why we're trying to take a proactive step here and give the Board of Supervisors an option to find a middle ground and be able to make sure that these things are addressed. So that's what I'm here to do. We want to do this in a responsible way. We're not trying to shy away from any sort of verbal commitments that we previously made, and we're dedicated and committed to making this a good and quality project. Thank you all for your time.
Is there anything else for Mark? You guys, Enos or Mark?
I did have a question / request. I'm on the zoning commission, and I'm pretty certain these things are gonna come up as discussion for the zoning commission. I appreciate Mark's offer to help us figure out what the right kinds of things are. To that end, could I get your contact information?
Yes,
for
sir.
The point at which the zoning commission is talking about this stuff?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, if even to just having meaningful conversation as well about ideas that you may have, and we can see how that, if this gets adopted, that to work through the development agreement process, we can get input from you as well, from the zoning commission. We'd be happy to do that. I'll be here afterwards. We can connect
Okay,
and
right.
chat. If that works.
Anything else from Mark? Good, appreciate your time.
Thank you all. I'll be here after too, if there's any questions or, or you need to follow up.
Sounds good.
So I'd like you to be in here, Mark, while I get am I next?
Yes, you are next.
Okay.
Here, just pop over this way.
Sure. Yeah, there's another chair.
There's a chair
right
back
over
there.
there.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, I'm Julie Kuntz. After listening to this, I'm going to make just a couple of comments. They will not be long, I promise. Sue, thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. But I do want to say, as far as the 1812-3 ordinance, there were a number of us that gave evidence that it was not in the best interest of the county to do that. We tried very hard. The board of supervisors at that time chose not to listen to us. And I think that's why we're in the predicament we are. Mark, you did mention that there were multiple landowner meetings, but really there were no public. You had to be invited. Only interested participants were involved. There are persons in the area over there in the Deer Creek project, Freeborn project, excuse me, that were never ever contacted, that didn't know anything about this coming up. So I take umbrage in the fact that you said that you had multiple landowner meetings. I would just say, I actually like Mark Krull. I've met with him a few times. I find him very, pleasant. However, he does work for Invenergy. He is a salesman. He does not have, nor Invenergy does not have the best interests of Worth County at heart. There's a lot of ways to get good data, and it's very important to get good unbiased data. And I think to take data from the company, from Invenergy, that they tell us what the setback should be, I don't think that's a smart move. I also feel it's imperative that we get this in writing. And I think I hope that that's certainly been shown to be needed. On February 23rd, the Winnebago Board of Supervisors discussed that small portion of this project, the worthwhile project that extends into their county. The Winnebago zoning administrator spoke. His name is Matt. He said at that time that there's been no permits issued. He has not even been contacted. So I would think that this project would be for pretty early on if they haven't even contacted them. The Winnebago Board of Supervisors were interested in setback distances for larger turbines. Noise limits was another thing, as well as the ADLS that was mentioned here, the aircraft detection lighting system. Mark Kroll spoke to the Winnebago Board of Supervisors, and Mark, your presentation did bring up a number of issues that I'm hoping to have discussed in a public forum, if you will agree to that. We don't need to read these things on the web and have, scary things on the web brought to us. All we need to go is to go up to Deer Creek and Grove Township. All I need to do is go and visit with the Benicheks, Jeff and Jennifer Rowe. Jennifer is wearing earbuds. She works, it's not just the morning or the late afternoon. She's working out there. Their animals their small babies are being born in that. But she's finding, well, that those earbuds cancel out the noise of the birds and the trees. It does not cancel out that low frequency sound. It doesn't work. Recently, I reviewed the actual DNR report on the Worthwhile Wind and North project. So I was very interested to see what you had to say, Mark, in regards to environmental concerns. When you spoke to the Winnebago County Supervisors, you mentioned that the study project is studied for 2 to 3 years prior to building anything. You consult with the DNR, and then based on their recommendations, you begin to site and build.
Quote, you see if the DNR has specific concerns and build those concerns into the way the project is cited, unquote. Citing is refined over time, end quote. The DNR data is just coming in. Yet, as has been mentioned, 2 wind turbine sites have had foundations poured and backfilled in 2 different fields, excavating of over 3 acres of ground. I was going to address that, but I think we've done enough of that. But it seems you went in and started this for reasons and did so before your data was in. So you did this when you admittedly are still in the quote planning stages. In your presentation at the Winnebago supervisor meeting, you mentioned you talk with the DNR to find out what is specifically protected after you get their report, which is online. I can give that to any of you that wish it. Then Invenergy does its own field study or a detailed desktop review to see if the state recommendations are actually applicable to habitats or potential habitats in the project area. So you hire your own specialists, I think you call them scientists, to review and decide what recommendations, if any, that will be followed. I would say to you, Worth County does have a specialist. Jim Hansen is our Director of Conservation. I talked to him this morning. He has not been contacted in any regard to environmental issues with wind turbines. Your findings or detailed desk reviews seem to allow that your projects to always come to fruition. And of course, there's no oversight in this process. So the DNR study, which is what I want to talk to you today, and again, it's available. I've never seen one of these before. It's something that it seems that the wind companies do not share unless they are perhaps it's put into some type of an ordinance that they do need to share it. I've made some maps. So the first one I'm going to hand out, what it shows is woodland, grassland areas. There's 3 for the supervisors. Here's another one to pass around. So this is showing, according to the report, to minimize chances for wind tower mortality of both birds and bats, it is recommended no additional and or larger wind turbines be placed in or near woodland, grassland, or grassland wetland habitats that are 40-acre tracts or larger. It then says that they should also be buffered, these tracts, by an additional ½ mile. And so on this map, I have highlighted the tracts that the sections they specifically list. Also on there is a red X. The following threatened, endangered, and special concern species are known in the project area, and they are located where the red X is, the Baltimore checker spot, the northern green orchid, which are both threatened, and the swamp thistle. Okay, that's map number 1. Now, map number 2 is showing you there are 5 eagles nests within this area, a 5-mile buffer of the bald eagle nest located in, and it shows the different sections there. So they recommend that no wind turbines be placed in these spots and that there be a 5-mile buffer around each. So if you look, there's one little corner tiny section here that's not covered by the 5-mile buffer. Okay, next map. It seems that this area here is quite a unique area. There are potholes. I think this is the pothole one. The proposed boundary project area also overlaps with 4 prairie pothole joint venture priority areas that have been identified as key areas to protect and restore important waterfowl habitat. So again, and I think you know it. From driving around, this is a unique area, okay? So that shows you on there the number of pothole areas that the DNR says shouldn't build wind turbines here. We recommend no turbines are placed in this area. And then the last one, the 5th one, 1, 2, 3. The department recommends that 2,000 acre complex of permanently protected wildlife areas and other public lands be buffered by 2 miles and other permanently protected areas be buffered by 1 mile. The project's boundary proximity is to major complexes, which include Elk Creek Marsh Wildlife Area, Silver Lake Wildlife Area, Brights Lake Wildlife Area, the Hogsback Marsh Wildlife Area, and Waterfowl Production Area, and the Rice Lake Wildlife Area are of concern. Based on this recommendation, only a small portion of the project boundary is not impacted. So instead of telling you everything that is impacted, they simply put on here what's not impacted, okay? Wildlife staff also advise there are existing sandhill crane populations in this area and believe that the area could potentially support whooping cranes in the future. I have not even touched on solar, that's for another day, but certainly that was a concern to our conservation department as far as fragmenting wildlife habitat. So what's the irony in all this too? What about the human lives in the project area? What about the people that live and work amongst an industrial wind plant? Invenergy, your project development in the Freeborn project speaks loudly. There has been complete disregard for humans and their habitat. You mentioned a 50 dBA noise standard. 50 dBA doesn't say anything, people. You gotta, sound and sound regulations are very complex. So what the wind companies like to do is they like to average out what the sound level is. You need a hard max level, okay? So that's one part. This 50 dBA you talk about, that does not meet the World Health Organization guidelines. dBA is not the way a contracted noise limit should be cited. And what are you gonna do? So you say, okay, they won't be more than 50 dBA. You go do the contract or you go do the project. What if they're more than 50 dBA? Then what? What's gonna happen then? You're gonna turn them off? You're gonna take them down? You know, you gotta put in the contract. You don't just, you know, sign something and then walk away, which is what happened. And I do take umbrage to you saying that you didn't have anything to do with this project over there. You know, you're here representing Invenergy. Invenergy was the developer for that. And I called and begged and pleaded with you guys multiple times. I called Mr. I don't remember his name. Tried to call the president of Invenergy. I talked to Dan Litchfield, who was the developer at that time, multiple times. You know, I got banned. I got banned from any type of website. They would not have a meeting with the public. So here we are. Here we are. You say you'll restore the land at the end of the project. Well, the project, the contract I sought was for 7 years of development possible, and then 25 years of a contract, which could be continued for another 25 years. That's 57 years. This is a long time, people. So I think we need to do our due diligence. I urge the supervisors to appeal ordinance. I call it Merlin's ordinance, 2018-1203, institute immediate moratorium on industrial wind, and also to repeal 427B.26 that gives industrial wind special tax assessment. This titrating up the 30% scale and what they're assessed on the tax results in many more millions of dollars being saved by these multi-billion-dollar corporations than they even pay to the county. So at the end of the day, what, according to the environmental DNR regulations, if we're just considering the animal protection, let alone the human protection, this would be an appropriate area to build this wind project. So I thank you guys for listening to me again. You know, to me, this is it. It's come time. I'm tired. I'm tired. I'm tired. I've tried. I don't know what else I can do. I've been told anything I say, certain members of this board are not going to listen to me. So I don't know what else to do. I tried to tell about the Deer Creek one. Those of us that got really active, we kept Worthwhile South out of our area. You're not there because a bunch of us got together, we learned. And that's why you're not there, and now you're up there. So these counties that you say have lesser setbacks, well, you know what? I bet you they don't have a developer there trying to put up 600 plus 600 foot and up, as you said at the Winnebago Supervisors meeting. They aren't there. You're here. You're here because we have no regulations. We're sitting ducks. So the time has come. Please protect health, safety, and welfare. Thank you.
Yes, Mark.
I'll be quick here, respond. I can be a little worried sometimes, but I mean, just to respond, I mean, we did have multiple landowner meetings. We have, that's a fact. I can give you dates for those as well. I understand where you're coming from and where some of the frustration is with the Deer Creek project, but just to reiterate one more time, we're trying to take the lessons from that prospect. This is one that I'm working on and do better here this next time. You mentioned again on Deer Creek that you haven't been able to speak with people. You and I have spoken many times, and so that's again maybe applicable in the past, is not applicable to what we're here talking about today. And it goes to the point that even if somebody is against the project, I'm not afraid to talk with them and then see if there's something that we can potentially do, because I legitimately really, these things matter to me. I know that might not hold a ton of weight, being with Invenergy, but I do want to make sure everybody's voice is heard. And I've tried to do that the past couple of years since I've been here. You wanted things put in writing, and that's exactly what I'm proposing to do. I'm proposing to do exactly what you're asking with this development agreement. And so then lastly, the environmental concerns, we can talk on that in more detail if you want to. It's an established process that you have a project area, or you reach out to the DNR for comments, then you work in coordination with yearly meetings with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to refine what your project footprint would be and what applicable setbacks would be. So we look at these things over multiple years and not just being able to print off the report and make determinations based on reviewing one time. We've looked at these things and have had 2 years of detailed studies and all these types of species, and we'll be, once we actually have a footprint to be able to look at and talk about, we can have more of a conversation about any sort of environmental impact. But I think you're going to see that it's extremely well developed and very responsibly guided. And again, that takes multiple years to get there, and it's also why we haven't provided a full layout today. We wanted to get some more refined information in to make sure that we could give that to you. But I just wanted to make sure we touched on those things, that the environmental aspect is super important to us. That it's not just chance, right, that we do these reviews and then the project works out. It's because we take an extremely proactive approach. We look at all of these studies over a long period of time and come to a conclusion that putting a turbine in a given location is going to have little to no environmental impact.
I get the last word, okay?
Absolutely.
So all of your modeling, all of your graphs, all of this, that can make everything look all fine and dandy. Talk to the people out here in the hallway. Have a meeting now. Have a meeting. And so you say you have these meetings, but they were not public meetings. They were by invitation only. They were not a chance for the people to sit down, have a public conversation and discourse in a public setting, okay? For them to learn from other things. That has not happened. And, you say you have these years and years of all this study. Well, this report just came out June 7th, 2019. And our county conservation guy hasn't even been contacted. I don't see a lot of, working on things here. So again, you can say, modeling and sound modeling is one thing. You can model it, and you can sometimes make computer modeling work one way or another. What matters is what the people are living with, okay? That's what matters. And again, for us to say, okay, Invenergy says 1,500 foot, that's a good setback. Really? And then to just, write that in there and not have, so what if in a 50 dBA? So what if 50 dBA isn't met? Then what? Let's do this business wise. Let's be smart about this. So I'm sorry. Again, as much as Mark and I have talked and I appreciate him, I even bought him coffee and whatever once. No. When you're dealing business, you get stuff in writing. You don't let the salesman tell you what it should be. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you both. Matt O'Brien, Lease on the line, Joel. Were you here? Personally?
Is it Matt Bryan?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so, Jackie asked me to, stop by and, so my supervisors were not free to stop by today, but it was very well stated, statement that you read, and so if you did need assistance with countywide zoning, I'm not here to say whether or not you should adopt countywide zoning.
Right.
If you do need assistance, you do plan to go that route, that you need assistance from NICOG, that we could, work with the P and Z and sit down and help facilitate discussion and, help prepare a plan and zoning, or zoning ordinance.
Sure.
Countywide, so.
In your thought, do you think ours would be fairly simple to do since we already have it established in a portion?
Yeah,
of
so
the
you do
county?
have, you already do have planning and zoning commission. A lot of times we run into issues, especially with cities, when they don't have planning and zoning, to try to assemble the planning and zoning commission. So I say, once we start the discussion as soon as possible, I heard a discussion about setting up a separate committee or commission to discuss wind turbine regulations that, I don't know what you guys have done so far, but you really want everything to start at the planning and zoning commission. It's become I've been here a little bit, but I only read a little bit. I don't know too much now, but it seems like it's become a burden for you supervisors and that you should have a lot of discussion shifted to planning and zoning and go from there.
Yep.
So.
Okay. Well, that's our biggest thing, I guess, is the cost and the process.
Yeah.
Obviously, so.
Yeah.
But since we're somewhat established, the process would make it that much easier.
Another part is, so the comp plan, we were talking about comp plan earlier. You do have the comp plan, so it is worded in a way that addresses the entire county. Just the only amendment that would need to be changed is a future land use map for the entire county, because right now it only addresses certain areas.
Sure.
So that's not too much. So my expertise is mapping more than anything. So
Actually, the future land use map in the plan does encompass countywide. It's just the zoning ordinance is territorially restricted to just the 3 townships.
okay, you said it doesn't.
The land use, the comprehensive development plan was countywide.
Okay, I thought I saw
The future land use map was also countywide.
Okay, I thought I saw
It's
it
just-
only as for certain
Yeah,
areas.
it's just the zoning
Okay.
ordinance is territorially restricted to just the townships of Heartland, Danville, and Brookfield.
Okay, I'll have to look at
And
it.
that was
again,
as a
yeah.
result of a parenthetical that the supervisors added to the ordinance, which was intended to be countywide according to the plan.
Okay, so I'll have to look at it again. I know Nikon assisted with that, but that was before my time. I was at Nikon for 8 years. So.
For
Yeah.
all of us, yeah.
Right.
So any idea on the cost if we did engage NICOG?
I would have to talk to my. I hate throwing numbers
No,
out.
that's
there
fine.
without- Yeah.
Is it
Don't even-
hourly or is it a flat rate?
So Joe Myrie, our old director, just retired. So there is discussion between one lump sum or hourly. So it might be. So you're talking about how you could do some.
I
just
think
kinda
the
know what you
zoning
want.
commission, I think the zoning commission could do the vast majority of
Yeah.
the work.
So we could set it up as hourly. So I
Sure.
don't know what that would be, but.
Yeah.
So if you guys know kind of like your direction you want to head, and so if you did need some assistance from that, I always do hourly.
If you could, just email that to the 3 of us. and
So I'll
just
tell
let
my
us know.
director that
pricing,
you guys
yeah.
are thinking more of the hourly route. That would be the best option for
Since,
you guys.
since we're already established, I think,
Yeah,
just to kind of look things over, and just get us, this way we get an idea of what it would cost if we decide to go that direction.
Yep.
So, are there any other questions or comments from Matt?
and just free of charge, I can go speak to the planning and zoning commission when you guys assemble and have a discussion with planning and zoning, get some conversation flowing there. So that's not going to cost you guys anything.
Yeah, I think it would be good for an initial conversation with the commission at large, just talk about what kind of assistance or resources could NIOG provide.
Yeah.
So that we have a comprehensive picture of, here's the work that we think is necessary. here's what we think we can get here, here's what we think.
And we will, the public can come in, you know, give input, so we
Right.
have,
Yeah, there'd be public hearings
yeah.
involved.
So I mean, I said, a lot of times jurisdictions don't use planning and zoning as much as they should. We should be using it as much as possible. I said on Mason City's planning and zoning commission, and there's so many things that should be coming to us that's not, we should be discussing more, so.
Sure. Okay.
So empowering the planning and zoning commission is the basic process.
Okay. Sounds good. Anything else? Thank you. And if you could, yeah, get us some costs on that.
Yeah, I'll ask my director.
Just have Myrtle.
I'll tell her we're doing the hourly, so
Okay.
if Joe didn't retire, he probably would have been here and
Yep.
speak to you guys, so Myrtle was busy, Chris Davis is on vacation, so.
No, not a problem. We appreciate you coming up
Send
here.
the young guy, so.
No, we appreciate that.
Okay, yeah, Thank you.
Thank you. I will jump down to Wind Respectful real quick, Melissa.
Nothing a lot. Enos and I have a meeting today in Osage. And then on Wednesday's advisory board meeting. And I did talk to Mark Thoma. And there is a deadline for that RF or grant, and it's on Wednesday, but it's a quarterly process, so we can apply for it again next year. I think the problem is just getting the four of us together to sit down. And I have 3 people that declined to turn in an RFP. I've received 1 RFP and there's 2 more out there. Mhm.
Was there a deadline on the RFPs or?
I gave them a deadline because I thought the grant was a one-time grant.
Right.
But I didn't realize it was a quarterly grant. So, and then exec board next week.
That will next month, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, I'll jump back up to 19, then discussion and possible action, resolution 2021.04.05, temporary moratorium on commercial wind energy system construction. Well, we're given a lot of information today. Given a lot of information over this last week. We decided to sit back, listen, look, whatever we did. I guess the next question is, what's step do we take next?
I guess I'm ready to make a decision on it. It's time to let people know whether we're gonna do it or we're not gonna do it. You know,
Is that a motion?
did you? I thought we were having discussion here.
No, we can continue
Either way.
discussion either way, but
Any discussion, Mark?
I guess, I'm still against the moratorium. I just think it's bad for the county. You know, you guys. We all have final say, I guess, one way or another. If that's what you want to bring to the table, that'll be up to you, but I just think it's a bad step. But, you know, this project is still probably 1.5 years in development yet, give or take. I'm not sure where they're at, but, you know, and if it's only, you know, you mentioned 3 months, this has got a 12 months, basically 12 months in, 18, however you want to look at it.
Yeah.
until July 21, so I doubt if you're gonna get it done in 3 months, I'd be real surprised, but that's possible, but, you know, so. Like I say, I'm not for a moratorium, but again, I'm not the only one on this board, so you have that choice. I just got a pretty good feeling it's gonna be bad for the development out the Welcome Center. I hope it doesn't affect the Manly Terminal decision that could be coming in the future. We don't know that yet, but there's a possibility.
It's just on wind. It's not a moratorium on everything. It's a temporary
I
moratorium
understand
on
that, but
commercial wind.
that does open the door. At any point, if we don't like something, we could do that. You know, that's just a, you know,
That's, yep, I
just an
understand that.
observation.
And I don't think it's really gonna affect Invenergy one bit at all, because you're still in the process of getting stuff signed up out there. You're close to the end, but I would like to see them involved in the talks and everything else. But I think the people want input into what's going on.
And I think they could still be involved in the talks. I think they've taken a step forward, which I'm glad to see also. You know, I admit it, we probably made a mistake out there in Deer Creek. I was sitting on the board. You know, they did bring that up, and we probably should have pushed that a little harder, but that's either here or now. That's done, that's over, that's a mistake that was made. Maybe it's not right, but, you know, that's not to say that we can't continue on in a good conversation. You can't continue to look at the zoning if that's what you guys want to do. You know, that could still continue on without a moratorium. I think this, you know, because you know, we don't know what's gonna be written into the zoning. I mean, if you wanna go with the reasonable setbacks, you know, kind of statewide, you know, you mentioned the numbers. That's kind of what I've seen on the zoning ordinances I've looked at. I'm not sure when Winnebago's at. I can't remember what theirs is about digging it up. I want to say theirs was like,
Can I make a point out just what the moratorium would be, I believe, if it's targeted as has been advocated, it would be specific to renewable energy projects. And really all it means is the county would not move forward with review and approval of any permits or agreements until such time as certain activities are completed. Those activities being a study to determine should there be rules around renewable energy projects. And then the Board of Supervisors would vote on those rules that the Planning Commission might suggest. And then the second question that would be decided is, should those rules apply countywide? And so the moratorium would simply say, we're not going to sign off on anything until we make those two decisions.
I'm just in fear of watching Deer Creek happen again. I really am. I'm not against it. I want to see this right, Mark, I do. I'll sit down 5 days a week with you if we have to and make this right. But that cannot happen again out there. Will not happen again. And that's what we need to do, is make sure that that does not happen again. And I don't know, I just, word to me, just any more of these days is no good. It has to be on paper. I can't trust word because it's just, we're getting to be that kind of society, it seems. So it has to be in writing that the county's best interests are to do the right thing. And that has to be in writing. This has to be done right. So however it may be, or whatever we have to do it to make sure we do the proper steps and we do it correct. You know what I mean? We make this fair as we can. And they do want to talk. I agree. We should talk. But what's the stop? If we don't stop them or slow them down, what's to say that this just won't jump ahead real fast and real sudden, and then we still don't have an agreement, we still don't have a number set? That's my fear.
It sounds like Invenergy's months away from that point anyway.
We are, you know, away from that prospect, and, you know, in no way is this like, you know, trying to halt or, you know, do anything other than engage in a meaningful conversation. And that's really what we want to do. You know, we got a while here before we submit a layout for y'all to review. That's going to come in June at the earliest, most likely sometime in July. So that gives us a good run and time. And what I was proposing is a way for us to have that period of time to look at this development agreement and see what we can come up with that might work for everybody.
Then the moratorium would simply say, hold on signing any agreement until such time as the zoning commission has had an opportunity to present the things to the board to make a decision.
You think a moratorium is wrong, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's definitely it's obviously not my decision, but I mean, I don't think that we need a moratorium to be able to engage in a negotiation. I mean, that's what we're here trying to do. I don't think that there needs to be some form of, even if it is temporary, this, you know, on the more drastic side of things, to engage in this conversation. You know, we're willingly trying to do that. You know, and I want the best thing for Worth County as well. I really do. You know, and I don't want signing of a moratorium in to kind of try and stop or have this fear about the worthwhile wind project to have these ongoing repercussions that might impact it in another way. So this is truly a way for me to try and come and the project to find a middle ground, to not have to put you in a tough decision, to be able to say, we got to do a moratorium. So I don't think that we need one to get in writing things that you're requesting and exactly what you're after. You don't have to do a moratorium to do that.
So I think the word moratorium is scaring folks.
I think this too.
As I've understood it, all that the moratorium does is make a formal statement that the Board of Supervisors is not gonna sign off on any permits or agreements until such time as the information is presented back to them from the zoning commission with recommendations. That's all it is.
And
It's,
it's the same as for Invenergy to give us information as
yes,
well.
absolutely. It establishes a time period by which the parties can talk as they've indicated they want to do.
Mhm.
And get together, find common ground and say, this is what we think the rules ought to be to go forward and live by.
Mhm.
And the moratorium, but quotes around that word, is simply a formal statement by the Board of Supervisors saying, yes, we're gonna hold off signing off on anything until we see that stuff and make a decision on it.
And again, you know, like
They
Jeff
do on
said,
some.
yeah, I mean, you know, the term moratorium, I think, you know, it does scare people, you know, and it does scare other types of development in an area. That's why it gets a lot of attention,
so
because it says, so then if we're offering a way to get exactly what the county wants without having that potential to frighten, you know, any other types of development or anything, you know, it seems like our perspective and what we're trying to do here is a way to not have that happen, to show that Worth County is interested in providing protections to their residences and not wanting to go down a route that throws a moratorium on some type of development that they don't agree with.
So what if the word moratorium were stricken from the vocabulary and the board simply vote on a decision that we're not gonna sign off on any permits or agreements until such time as we hear back from the zoning commission with recommendations and we vote on it?
Or, I mean, you know, we don't, like, we could just engage in that process through the development agreement without just striking it and getting into semantics.
Yeah, but doing so is, it,
Doing it so sets us up for what just happened. We didn't have it in the contract.
well, it doesn't, it
Guys,
doesn't
I'm gonna-
provide for the zoning commission.
I'm gonna slow this down a touch. Try to keep this between the three of us at the table. Because we could honestly make a career out of back and forth on this, so. The big question is the big interest of the county. I hate to have to do it too, but it's what needs to be done, I believe, and I will put the motion on the table to employ and put a temporary moratorium in to continue discussions with Invenergy, to continue proper setbacks. I don't want this to be a shutdown, done deal. I want this to work, Mark. If I have to drive to Oklahoma and visit you, I will. I'm just saying, we need to talk and we need to make this right. And if you can agree with that, then I will put the motion on the table to do a temporary moratorium until further discussions can be made. This has a sunset. It is just a resolution. It does not hold water per se, but it's something to give us time to make sure that the process is done properly.
Could last a month, could last 6 months, could last 4 months. It's temporary.
It is.
The minute this thing gets straightened out, it's done and over with.
You know, I
So,
mean,
We actually have a motion on the floor, so if you want to second it, so we can just continue discussion.
We
that's
can
the way
discuss
should
it
be
with a
done.
motion.
You need to have a second before you can discuss it.
Is
Once
there-
the
You made the
motion's
motion?
I
on,
made the motion.
I second the motion.
Okay.
So now if you want some discussion, you can.
Was there any other discussion on it?
No, you were gonna say something.
Well, technically, he's not involved in the
This-
discussion.
this discussion
Let's
is-
keep
I
it
asked him a
moving.
question. so-
I know.
On the motion. it's a
Which,
discussion.
that's not how, we shouldn't do it that way.
I guess,
So-
it's- go ahead, Mark.
Again, you guys can go ahead with it. That's your choice. It doesn't have to be 100% unanimous decision. But there's still, and I respect your going after the petition, you did a lot of work. Appreciate that. I've heard from both sides, landowners and stuff. There's still close to 7,000 people in the county that haven't signed this also. So I don't know where that means, where they stand. I don't know. You know, we don't hear from 7,000. We don't hear from everybody in the county. So, I mean, that's something to take into consideration here too, guys.
And I agree with you totally. Basically what we're hearing, well, we're hearing from quite a few people. I know it's on the list that wasn't in one of these top tiers of the 4 townships up above. But we heard a lot out of Deer Creek. We heard a lot out of Heartland. We heard a lot out of Silver Lake. We heard a lot out of Grove on that thing. So, and my attitude is considering it's temporary And the minute this stuff gets straightened out between Invenergy and us, and I don't really think it's gonna affect their project one bit at all, but I might be wrong. My attitude is the resolution is done just that fast.
It can be removed just that fast. And like I said, it's not something that would honestly hold water. It's not an ordinance, it's not a binding law. This is just something to grab a little control and a little time and make it right.
People want to be involved in the setback. They want to be involved in the decibels and all this kind of stuff. And that's why you have these open meetings.
Yeah, the only people that would be involved would be the zoning board.
Right.
Well,
Zoning-
first, but you gradually have.
Yes, the zoning commission has to have public hearing.
Yep.
But on the changes that we would
And if
propose.
countywide zoning would come into effect, then the zoning commission would just be expanded to
Yes.
one person probably from every township.
That's what I would say, because right now it's
It has to be.
limited to the three. in the
It
south.
has to be, so then they get their vote and their opinions too. They can work with their portion of the county. if
Yep.
this does happen. So it would become a countywide discussion.
It would be fair to have everybody involved.
Yeah,
Yes.
well, that's what it is, too, we can discuss that too, but-
Right. Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion on it? We'll take a roll call vote. Lowberg,
Aye.
Smithy,
Nay,
Stone, aye. Resolution will pass. We will have a temporary moratorium on wind turbine construction until we can come up to an agreement on setbacks and regulations and try to make this right. Try to make it fair. Yeah. Discussion on resolution 2018-1231. That's a part of the ordinance that has been noticed for a public hearing, so we'll skip that. The road vacation will skip. Winter Becko's already gone through. Jason Petersburg gave us a water tower inspection proposal.
Yeah.
And we can, if you guys want to think about it, put it off, what was it, 3,500 or something like that?
Yep, that's
Get
what I
both,
read it as.
both towers out there inspected, which we know the one, the casino sign, the little one needs some attention because that mixer's going on, and you see what the heck's going on with that. Yeah, and then we do want to just check the integrity of the blue one in case we would need it in the future for this development, so. If you guys want to think about it, we can push it off till next week, but if you want to accept it, I mean, we have funding, obviously, and water and wastewater out there to pay for this or not.
I
Don't know.
can't hear what's,
Okay.
what'd you just say?
Do we have funding for doing this in our wastewater, water
Yeah.
fund
You're fine.
out there? Okay. So, you guys want to move ahead with inspections on that? So,
probably be a good
I
idea.
think so.
okay. Take a motion to approve the water tower inspection proposal from Beacher and Kim.
I'll make that motion.
There's
I'll
a second?
second it.
Julie, we're in discussion here, please. Can you wait?
All right, there's a motion and a second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right, sign that and let those guys get started. I think in May they were talking. So, people service, I don't believe they're on, need anything. COVID-19 policy, we should probably have, make this a notion to our department heads to make a decision on whether to extend it or
Next week.
change anything on next week's meeting.
Yeah, wasn't it?
Yeah, we'll discuss that next week. Board appointments, sorry, I'm still working with the gentleman down in Danville Township. I will keep on that. Supervisor Weekly, Enos.
I had North Iowa Children's Alliance. And they talked a lot about daycare, and in Hancock County Learning Center, there's 58 children and it was going broke. And they doled $17,000 to it to keep it afloat. Because it's the only one they've got in Brett, Iowa. So that's the only one I had there.
I didn't really have anything other than, this guy called me the other night and brought this up, North Iowa Regional Housing Authority.
Yeah,
You're
I'm
sitting
on
in
that.
that, you were sitting.
Oh, well,
in
yeah,
that.
he's got
I'm
that.
on it.
So apparently, we are the only county that actually has a supervisor sitting on there. All the other counties have a non-supervisor on the board.
Yeah, supervisor, I think, can appoint it. And I believe this is what I was told that happened. Merlin just took it.
Yes, he
Yep.
did. I
So and
remember
then it
that.
just kind of came to me.
Right,
But
That's
if,
what I thought.
yeah, we can, none of them are elected officials on that
or
board.
give you one less board if you
So-
can find somebody. to
And
do
I've got a
it.
lot of them.
I know you do.
Yeah.
That's why.
If, yes, it's not mandatory that it's an elected official or supervisor.
That's what I figured.
So we could, if we could find someone to nominate for that board, we could.
You
then
could
move
think of
these from-
somebody, maybe we could make that change, I mean.
Yeah.
we-
I found
before
my
it was-
replacement, so I guess it's up to you.
Yeah,
Yours.
You found me.
It was Jerry.
I took you on the big one.
It was Jerry, and then he got off, so I don't know
Okay.
if you know somebody would be interested in sitting on that.
I hadn't thought about it till just now.
Well, I
didn't know it was
didn't
available.
know, I didn't really realize that. This guy said, how come that's the way? He actually sits on the board for another county. He said, why? Yeah, it's always been that way.
Well, it was shocking to see that when I went there too. But
Yeah,
I think that's just
so-
what happened. He just assumed that position himself and
Right.
so, okay. I had call with Care Connections last week, just they do like every 3 or 4 weeks, they're doing the COVID calls with all the groups that serve our area. Just to see how things are going, how their public health's doing, the shots are getting out, kind of what everybody's got going on, the headaches they're seeing now with utilities, power companies, you can't shut off heat during the winter. Now that's coming through, a lot of people are behind looking for money, and they're doing a lot to try to keep everybody going, but it's been a kind of a tough process, and very good group, a very good meeting that they continue to do, so. And then. I met with Mason City Fire on Friday, Channel 6 News, and Mark Sakin, he's Iowa EMS Association president, and Channel 6 called and basically was asking about EMS in northern Iowa. They're having the same situation in southern Minnesota. That's got that invisible boundary, but it's the same problems up there, and they're just trying to do a story that's going to come out in May sometime, but just a general story on the whole area and what to do with EMS and how to approach it. What counties are doing, wait for the state, if the states are going to help out. So some real good conversation with all those folks, and in May sometime they said that story will come out to see what's going on. So that's all I had. So. Anything to go on the agenda for next week? No? We got everything on there that we're all gonna be a part of, so. I'm gonna take a motion to adjourn the supervisors meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the supervisors meeting.
For a second,
Second.
all in favor, aye.
Aye.
All right, meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everybody.